Powered by Riverside FM.
On this episode of Bullet Time, we welcome back Frank and developer Volition with their 2005 shooter, The Punisher.
I'm on 3 episodes about police brutality, Punisher isn't a cop, but it's same ballpark.
Well, he used to be a
100%.
police. Well, in some. Okay.
Depends on the continuity.
Yeah, that's. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Matty, you're a bit more of a. Actually, you know what? I'll quickly say. Hi, folks. Welcome to Bullet Time, the video game podcast that analyzes the shooters that missed their marks. And yeah, as Snake said, this is now. I think this may be the second episode that people will listen to, which will be part of the quote. Police brutality miniseries that we're doing. Not that it's really that wasn't really intended.
It's an
to
unofficial
be the case.
miniseries where I looked at the lineup of games you had me on, which is this, Urban Chaos, and Judge Dredd, and I just joked,
Yes.
have you put me on 3 episodes about police brutality? And I was like, was that intentional or was that just coincidence? And I just found it funny.
Yeah, mostly coincidence. I mean, I think we also joked as well that you were on for quote the Scumbag Trilogy because we also did Boiling Point, which the guy wasn't a police officer, but he is has got it.
Former Foreign Legion, loves murdering people, clearly in it for the thrills.
Yeah.
Saul Myers is a scumbag, and I love him for it.
And you know what? Much like Frank Castle, Saul Myers needed one of his family members to be put in danger to be activated, essentially. So,
Yes.
although I guess Saul Myers is kind of more of a Liam Neeson Taken style vigilante versus Frank Castle, who is a more, Charles Bronson style vigilante. Matt, I feel like you already know this, but genuinely one of the most exciting things that I learned that The Punisher was based on a previously existing character.
Yes, like some old pulp novels, right, from the 70s?
He's based on a character called Mac Bolan, who was known as the Executioner, who had a series of books from 1969 onwards, and the Punisher himself appeared in 1974. So yeah, a good 5 years later.
Yeah, he's part of that same the same pool of, like we were saying, like dadcore stuff, right? Like
yes,
bad dads who desperately need to prove that they're good dads by doing the thing they did as bad dads, but doing it more this time and with more guns. I think Judge Dredd comes out of that same pool. Different sides of the Atlantic, but writers drawing from the same stuff, like all these pulpy, Dirty Harry characters, these bad cops, renegades
it's like how
who play
Dennis
by their
the
own
Menace
rules.
UK and US came out at the same time, but
Yes.
the dad equivalent, the ultra-violent dad equivalent.
If Dennis the Menace had a gun.
Dredd is, and I mean, I guess we'll talk about this more when we eventually do the Dredd episode, but that is very much like, because 2000 AD had been around for years of, it was called, I can't remember what the name of the web magazine was, but it was where Dan Dare was invented. He was like a 1940s.
Battle action.
Yeah, that was it. Who was like a kind of a Master of the Skies is Dan Dare, the daring pilot. But then when they rebooted it then in the 70s with 2000 AD, and it kind of was more of a science fiction-y bent, this was when we were starting to get all the post Macmillan, beginning of Thatcher, beginning of punk kind of sort of trends coming in. And yeah, as Matt was saying, is Dredd is this just kind of reaction to someone like a Dirty Harry, where all of these kind of not cynical, but sort of sarky Brits are sitting around and it's like, oh, what would happen if it was Judge Dredd, but it was worse? And then is where Dredd essentially begins. And I mean, Matt, I guess to just quickly introduce you to the folks at home who've been listening to you for a few minutes. Also joining us on this episode as well as a guest host is YouTube's very own Microchip at YouTube's Sniper.
Hello.
But joining us on this talk about 2005's The Punisher is Matt from the channel Stoked Matty, who, over the time of this episode's recording, you've recently put out a video about the character of Judge Death, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is my second video about Judge Dredd. I've done 2 now, which I think now makes me the most prolific Judge Dredd tuber on the internet.
Interesting.
It's really not a subject that's covered very well, which is actually one of the reasons I started doing it, because I really wanted to watch videos about Judge Dredd, and there aren't very many, apart from, people doing like the recaps. That's quite common, but like people actually breaking it down and talking about it, there's not that much. So I kind of made the videos that I wanted to watch. But yes, so I guess just to introduce myself, my name's Matty, my channel's called Stoked, and I really like to dig into popular culture from what I like to think of as like the Y2K era, which is really what I think of as the mid-90s to the mid-2000s. Anything kind of falling either side of the millennium. And I don't always stick to that, because like we're saying, the 2 videos I've done about Judge Dredd have been comics from the 80s. But I think it's all part of a contextual sort of tapestry, and I just like to talk about comics and games and films and music and whatever really takes my interest.
Yeah. And in regards to like Y2K core, I would say that kind of the games that we've been covering on Bullet Time, which have sort of covered from the early, well, I mean, granted, we've hopped all over the place in regards to years, but like mostly the focus has been on stuff that's like kind of post Halo, Xbox and PS2 games, then sort of in the 360 era where you got like a lot of stuff that was trying to be Call of Duty, or like was riffing on BioShock, or like just kind of like the
Before the console FPS became codified or codified.
Yes. No, exactly. Yeah, where everybody was sort of, it became like the biggest genre in the world, and everybody was trying to kind of like, either you had sort of the old standbys trying to lean in on it, come up with their own sort of iteration on that, or you just had these kind of like spectacular misfires, which, we've talked about a few times. I would say that this game doesn't quite fall under that bracket. Granted, it also doesn't really fall under the bracket of a first-person shooter. This is now I want to say the 3rd game, Snake, that we've covered with you that is
the
like,
third-person shooter.
Wow.
Yeah. It's happened.
That makes it the 9th.
One day we'll cover a second-person shooter just to bridge the gap.
No, exactly. You have to do, once we do second-person shooters, then we can just cover every third-person shooter from then on. But Snake, I will pass the baton to you, because this was kind of another one of your choices of like, you looked at the list and this did hop out to you as like something you wanted to talk about. But Matt, I guess first question, have you played? Well, before this podcast, had you played The Punisher?
No, I hadn't. I remember it coming out. I remember it being announced for the PlayStation 2, and I remember probably reading, whatever would have been the popular mag at the time, Games TM, or, one of the highbrow ones, because I'm a very intellectual person.
Oh,
but I remember Edge, that would have been it. If I was
just a scrub reading like PSN or
Games Master
360 mag.
Yeah.
No way. No, it almost certainly would have been like PlayStation Magazine. But yeah, so I remember reading about it, and I remember this is the great thing about coming onto the podcast, is a 20-year-old memory of knowing it had the torture scenes, because that was the USP even then, and I never played it. But that's the one thing I remember, is this is the game where you get to torture people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the thing. So I have played it now, but I hadn't actually played it. It's a great opportunity for me to play something which essentially I've missed.
Yeah. And I mean, Snake, so is this something that you had played when it came out?
Yes, I had this around the time of release. It's a lot of my YouTubing and a lot of podcasts. A lot of projects just seem to be, hey, I never finished that as a kid. Let's give myself an excuse to find time to go back and, just knock that one out.
Yeah.
And it's very funny that I didn't finish this one. We'll get more into it as we get into gameplay, but the reason why I find quite funny, considering how I wound up playing this game.
Okay. I will say, so once again, this is like another game that this was kind of suggested rather than something that was kind of at the back of my mind. So I hadn't actually played this game. I'd always been aware of it because, funnily enough, like, not only is this like another third-person shooter that we're covering, but it's the second Volition game that we've covered on the podcast, because Snake, you were with us when we talked about Red Faction with Heavy-Eyed. And
it is just a funny note on that as well.
Yeah.
That was another thing that kind of brought this game back to my mind. Was I'm a massive Saints Row fan.
Yes,
and I'd played the Punisher, and then I played Saints Row, and I think I had this thing of, this feels kind of like the Punisher, and then realizing, it from the same studio sort of grew out of it. That's not entirely. They are semi-separate projects, but there's a funny little handing over of the torch there.
Yeah, which we can obviously get into when we talk about the game itself. But I think it's just super interesting that like a lot of kind of setting the table when we were talking about Red Faction was talking about their first game, Descent, which was this, mind-boggling kind of 6 Degrees of Freedom space shooter that then became an FPS, and then that provided the base. Like the Red Faction 2 engine is what they used for the Punisher, which is this third-person shooter where they pulled it out. And then, that becomes the basis for Saints Row and essentially every game that they've made after that. Because, like Volition, I don't think I started playing their games until, like, I think I had rented or I had borrowed a copy of Saints Row 2. I was like, this is okay, but, like, it's not GTA 4. That's, sort of when my bread is buttered. Then, sort of as I grew a bit older and I kind of appreciated more sort of, like, arcadious stuff, I think, like, that was when Saints Row 3 kind of hit for me, and I was like, this is good. Like, I can jam on this. And then 4th was just kind of more of the same, and I was like, no, fair enough. Volition, I think you're an interesting developer, and I guess I'll keep an eye on whatever you guys do next, which, I don't know, it was funny because they did that, and then they rebooted Red Faction, and then they kind of ended up rebooting Saints Row, and then, as was kind of like the weird sour note that I had to append onto the Volition, onto the Red Faction episode that we did, like, that was the last game that they've produced. Although recent news is that like quite a few of those people have now started a new support studio in Chicago, so that might lead to something. But
they are an interesting studio just in terms of they are very hit and miss. Like they've made absolute corkers and absolute crap, and it's funny how divisive, because you were talking about the Saints Rows you enjoyed, and I was a Saints Row 2 guy.
Yeah.
And I despised the third when I was a kid. I've gotten out of like that rabid hate, but at the time I was like, oh, this is bad. This is a really rough game. They've dropped it. And then I just kind of like the 4th kind of placidly because I'd accepted Saints Row 2 wasn't going to happen again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I liked Red Faction. I had Red Faction 2 on PS2 as a kid.
Yeah.
And Punisher I was fond of.
Yeah, it was cool getting around with the Punisher, and I guess it's a kind of a weird mirroring of what I was saying about like seeing this evolution of them going from like this pioneering first-person developer into kind of what they then became. The Punisher also is kind of like a nice reflection of just the sort of evolution of comic book movies at the time as well, which, like, I don't think I would be off base in saying, and obviously, Matty, feel free to pop in and maybe fix up what I'm about to say, but like, I do kind of have a weird fascination with the mid-2000s comic book movie where the MCU stuff was like, when it came out, it was kind of incredible of just how grounded and polished it was and sort of a Batman Begins kind of way. But then as that sort of went along, I think, I don't know, like I think like a lot of people, Endgame came out and I was like, okay, cool, I'm donezo. Like I don't really want more films like that. Which, as a result, has kind of made a lot of these sort of wonkier early 2000s comic book movies maybe... I don't know, I think a little bit is nostalgia, but it is like...
There's a retroactive charm.
Yeah.
For the podcast, I watched the Thomas Jane and the Thomas Jane 2004 film, which this feels like a loose continuation of.
Yeah, definitely.
And Punisher Warzone. Both very dumb movies in different ways, both quite entertaining.
Yeah.
I prefer the Thomas Jane one.
I prefer the Thomas Jane as well. I felt more engaged with it, but I think when I'm like just laughing at Warzone, I'm getting a very different kind of this is daft and I like it.
Warzone
kind of vibe out of it.
Yeah. Warzone reminds me a little bit of like Blade 2 had a tiny bit of this, but more so like Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, where it was these kind of like...
See, these are all great films, James. These are all 10 out of 10.
No. But what I was thinking of just like that kind of small era of time with Marvel movies where the MCU hadn't quite taken off yet.
Yeah.
And so you still had these kind of DVD budgeted, we'll shoot it in Krakow or we'll shoot it in Belarus style.
Yes, exactly that. Did you know that there's a Man Thing film from the 2000s? Yes, straight to DVD. Like weird prosthetic horror Man Thing film. Yeah. It's like... It's perfectly typical of this period in that there's very little money, because in this time period, if anybody had the money to license it, anybody can make a Marvel film, right? There was just all bets are off, right? And obviously somebody got just enough money to buy the license and to make a video about make a film about Man-Thing, and it isn't very good, but it's also kind of amazing that this just happened and will probably never happen again. Like unless Disney Plus make a Man-Thing thing, which they did with the black and white one. I can't remember what that one's called, but that's the only time. And it's it's incredible. So absolutely, I think going back to your point about that 2000s period before the MCU, and I think this is true of games in general as well. Yeah, is we have, for me, one of the things that I like talking about this era is it is in an era before a lot of standards were laid down. Yes. And we'll get to the game, but definitely the films as well. So none of these films were connected. They weren't trying to make a connected universe. But within 5 years, I think we'd had Spider-Man, Daredevil, Blade, Punisher, Elektra. Yeah, like a ton of these films came out, and they weren't actually supposed to be happening in the same universe, but they kind of sort of pretended they were. And it was like, oh, is it, isn't it? And it was all just kind of left up to the fans. And the whole thing was like super scrappy. Mm. There's no Kevin Feige. There's no like oversight from this one, Ubermensch who's controlling everything and making sure everything has the same consistent tone. It just means all these films are going in their own direction, doing their own thing. And for me, I find that very, very exciting, purely because you don't know if something's going to be good or not. Whereas now, I would say the MCU, you know what to expect from an MCU film. I'm not going to use this as an opportunity to bash them. No. But you're never going to go and sit down and watch an MCU film and go, wow, I was surprised with how, I don't know, sad that was, or surprised with how angry that was, or there's not really these kind of intense emotional things because it's got too much too much to worry about.
Like, this needs to be recognizable as part of a larger whole.
It's a bit too on rails.
There's reasons for that. Yeah. And I think, these games are the same thing. And I think when you get to, for instance, computer games from the 2000s, you pick up a game on the PS2, you pick up a first-person shooter, there's not even a guaranteed way you can know what button jump is assigned to, or what button fire is. And
it's kind of the tragic thing I find with Volition as well, because Volition was kind of the smallest AAA studio. Yeah. And they didn't really hang on too well, I think, once you get later and later, like after 2015. Yeah. It was like beyond their means, beyond their budget to kind of keep up.
Like those budgets just went crazy after 2005, right? After the Xbox 360 launched, the game changed, and you needed real money to survive in that game.
It's like a lot of British game developers who flourished in the 80s and 90s were struggling in the 2000s because it kind of, they were making stuff on, the microcomputers and then the early kind of 90s computers where you didn't need too big a budget, you didn't need too big a team, you could, and then same thing happened here where budgets got too big for that kind of weird creativity that is born just as much of not knowing the standards as it is about actual genuine innovation. Let's try this.
We talked quite a bit about that when we were doing the Free Radical mini series, and just
Free Radical were they're the most perfect example of this. Yeah, I think they typify this. They just struggled.
It's funny because I've been writing quite a bit recently about, I've been doing quite a lot of research into Tomb Raider, and it's like, this will be more relevant when we do the Urban Chaos episode, but IDOS were just the masters of like the AA budget banger. And the problem is that like, I feel like it's one of those things that like applying the modern AAA, AA framing to games from like 15 or 20 years ago doesn't massively fit just because of how
the term wasn't used, was it? Like,
no, exactly. And like, and how big the gap has now grown between smaller projects and these massive projects that are coming out. But like, IDOS used to put out like 15 games a year. And like on the most expensive end would be something like a Tomb Raider Legend or something, like that would be their big tentpole, which would then, that would be the money that would fund smaller, odder projects like in Urban Chaos. And Volition, as you said, Snake, like they fit really well into that. And I think they were at their, or at least they flourished the most when they were under THQ, which they were the guys who published, they were the ones who published The Punisher. Like, and I think as well, like, it was in those last years of Volition when THQ went under, which we talked a lot about when we talked about Homefront: The Revolution, because that was like the original Homefront was one of the last big THQ games of, okay, this is where the winds are blowing. Activision has now become Activision and EA and Ubisoft. We can't compete with them on the levels that they're working at. This is our one big punt. Didn't happen, and so a lot of their IP then ended up in the hands of other people, including, who are now in Bracer, which is where Volition ended up at, under as well. And it is a shame, because talking about that and talking about those kind of comic book films at the time, which had this sort of odd tone, every kind of comic game had that a little bit as well. But the year that this came out, I think, was around the same time as the Hulk Ultimate Destruction, which was Vivendi, under Activision, and that doesn't play anything like the Punisher does. And then you had the Spider-Man games that were being made by Activision that were their own little thing as well. But
for years, Spider-Man games were just living in the shadow of Spider-Man 2. None could quite cinch that again, even though there were good Spider-Man games after that, but it's only really fans who were kind of hyping that up. And this very odd thing. And
now we're in this just kind of odd place with the MCU that games are now so expensive that you don't get a ton of Avengers games. The only one Avengers game that we got came out.
It was a bloody Skinner box. It was a terribly dull
the live
game.
service. Yeah,
it was they tried to make The Last of Us, but then tried to fit a live service model in it, and it was like, what are you doing?
And then Guardians was maybe the only other, probably the only good superhero game for
Guardians.
I've
heard good stuff about, and
it's a lot of kind of mobile games and stuff like
it's
that
all
now for them,
games.
isn't it? Because that's
it's the same with Star Wars. Not to derail this completely,
Star Wars.
But Star Wars is all mobile
Star Wars
games,
has a massive gacha game. I don't know what else you'd call it, with that kind of Heroes of the Force or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
All the big franchises now, they're not putting out not that Punisher was a big franchise, but they're not going to release a mid-budget console game because they're like, no, we will not allow our IP to be what could be considered shovelware.
I think this is an end of episode question, which I guess I'm going to bring to the forefront, which is could you even make a Punisher game today? I mean, I know that this sounds so kind of comics game say kind of, could they make the Punisher today? And it's I think more from just a logistical standpoint rather than a taste standpoint, because getting into the game itself, I think is kind of interesting.
I'm going to say something really
Punisher.
I'm going to say something really tragic and ironic.
What?
I think the closest thing to a Punisher game there has been in the last decade was Hatred, as weird as that sounds.
Right. No, I would have said
you can see where
Batman
my brain
Arkham.
makes that connection, right?
I can't. Matty, what was the one you were going to say?
Batman, I think the Arkham games. I actually think Punisher could have really easily existed in the modern sphere as just reskin Batman and just have it so he kills people, and then that's it. Take the cape off, put a skull on, boom, easy.
Listen,
you know what's funny as
Where's
well?
my check?
We'll get more into the game, but the Arkham games kind of started. They didn't start actually, or did they? As a sequel to the Batman Begins game, and then it's it just became,
they were separate.
No,
they're definitely a separate.
Okay, they were separate. Never mind that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this makes my point a bit less strong, but actually, it's just a funny connection to draw on. But that Batman Begins game, which was in the same console generation as the Punisher game, had a very big fear mechanic.
Same year.
And this game does have a light fear mechanic in it, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what? Sorry, Matt, you make your point before.
No, what I was the point I wanted to make before we do move past it completely is actually I do think, and this is the whole thing about the 2000s, about why I think this is so good that it happened then. Because I don't think it could happen like this again. It can happen again, but it wouldn't be like this. And I actually made a video on my channel some years ago I called it the spirit of 2005, why games were better when they cost less money to make. And basically it's exactly what we've been talking about here. The early days of games, you could make them for nothing. 2-3 people could make a game, get it out on the Spectrum, no worries. You fast forward 20 years. But basically the 2000s was the last kind of Renaissance era where, the studios had enough money.
Market?
They had enough. Well, yeah, there was just enough technology. There was just enough money. The teams were just big enough to make any game you wanted, and you could make it pretty well. Yeah. But this was just as the industry was tipping over into, I mean, a proper industry. Like, so it wasn't just like bedroom coders now, that this is actually now a real thing. There are shareholders, there's big companies involved, there's watches who want adverts in their games, all this kind of stuff. And so that massive economic boom then got rid of the idea of, we can actually just get 5 people to turn around a demo in a week. I mean, that's what like Free Radical said, isn't it? Like, they spoke about their iterative process, about how we can get a demo up and running in a morning, we can play it in the afternoon, and we can just decide there and then if it's a good idea. Whereas once you're talking about things like, I don't know, Assassin's Creed, whatever the most recent one of that is.
Once a project takes 100 people and
you have 100 people,
million at it, suddenly experimentation is no longer an option.
Exactly that, right? So, and I think that is what's so great about this game. So whether it's good or bad doesn't necessarily matter, but it's a big gamble that everybody kind of thought this sounds like a fun idea, and they had the freedom to go and do it.
And I will use that as a nice hopping off point to basically say that was kind of how this game ended up coming together. So quite a bit of this information, interestingly enough, and people can, I might put a link to this in the podcast description, but you can also go and seek this out. But there was a little time around when Saints Row 4 was being developed where their YouTube channel was putting out a lot of developer videos, but also these kind of like little Let's Play series where people who worked at Volition played through their old games. And one of them was they played through the Punisher, and it was the senior designer and one of the graphic artists, I believe, worked on it. And so they had quite a few stories about how this game came together. And yeah, like this started as an internal project, internal pitch kind of thing of, so at the time, Volition was sort of in this place of, they had done the 2 Red Faction games, where the first one had done critically and commercially well. Second one did okay commercially, but critically, nobody particularly liked it. And it was literally because it came out like 10 months later. Like, it was rushed development, like, and pushed to consoles. They then did Summoner 2, which was a sequel to an RPG series that they had done beforehand, which was like a PS2 launch. And then THQ basically said, look, split yourselves up into little teams, come up with some little ideas, and, we'll go from there.
Oh, like the Double Fine kind of things they used to do. They're little kind of in-house game jams.
Exactly that, yeah. And that, funnily enough, one of the teams that had splintered off had worked on a project where they wanted to revitalize a project that they had the idea for this before, around the time of Red Faction 1, which was called Underground, which I don't know if you remember, like, if you've ever like looked into this, Snape, but like Underground were like the idea that they came up with for that. They then put into Bling Bling, which is then Bling Bling.
Oh, Saints. What became Saints Row?
Yeah. The Underground story I just want to quickly mention because it's so funny in regards to another episode of Bullet Time that we did, which was the concept for Underground, which isn't what the Punisher was. Like, that was a separate team, and I'll talk a little bit about how that kind of came together. But Underground the idea was it was a little team-based shooter that was about bank heists, and you'd go around and you'd do like almost very early Payday style gameplay. But the concept, they came up with it around 2002, and at this point, they had come up with it around 2001. They went to THQ and pitched, and they were like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And then a week later, GTA 3 came out. Ooh. And so THQ went back to them and said, "Hey, could you make this concept like the biggest open world game possible?" And Volition,
sure, we'll see you next generation.
Yeah, Volition were like, not for our, not with our team size and our budget. Since the THQ were like, "Oh, put that on ice then," which is how it eventually came back for Bling Bling. I find that so funny because, Snake, remember when we did the episode on Black and what are they called? Renderware. Criterion, they were going to make a Skate or Die game for EA around that same time because they had done all those skateboarding games on the Dreamcast. And EA were like, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea." And then GTA 3 came out and they said, "Hey, can you make your skateboarding game the biggest open world game possible?" So
I wonder how many polite rejections happened to publishers around that time when they saw GTA numbers and a million kind of producers teams going, can you make this open world GTA, please? Like, simultaneously in every development office across the world.
We're hearing a lot about these sandbox games. That's what they called them back then, right? Before it was called open world. There was sandbox.
Yeah,
they were
that's
called
right.
GTA clones at that
moment.
Yeah,
GTA clone was another good one, yeah.
Yeah. And I just
But
find
see,
it
that's
so
what I'm saying. The homogenization, right? So this is just before then, just before that point, right? Or maybe just around that time.
Yeah. No, and I just find it so funny in regards to like, because whenever I've like written in games before, I've always gone, oh, you know, a GTA 3 was influential because of this, but then never really backed that up. So just doing research and realizing just how many projects were put on ice or completely changed identity because of GTA 3, I just find so funny. And I think a little bit of that is probably what fed into the Punisher, because the other team that they were bounding around some concepts. They had read, or like they had an internal email, and THQ were like, hey, we've purchased a bunch of licenses from Marvel. We have Captain America, and we also have the Punisher. And apparently, like, they just saw the Punisher name and went, huh, we could do something here. And I guess maybe they're thinking, like, we have experience making FPS games from the Red Factions, but also... Oh yeah, sorry, this is a bit that I forgot to mention. So when they were doing these little internal demos and projects, to give them a little bit of focus, basically the head of Volition basically said, all right, here's your prompt for coming up with some ideas. A game where you play as a bad guy.
Huh.
And so that's why one team went away and made a game about bank robbers, and how these guys went away and said, hey, the THQ have the Punisher license, let's put something together for them. And so, yeah, they literally went to the heads of THQ, initially pitched an FPS game, only for THQ to go back and say, we've bought a comic book license, is third person, so you can see the character. They went, fair enough. And that is where basically development started on this project. By the sounds of things, seemed to be quite a nice little turnaround, not too many issues. Like, basically they came up with a lot of their initial concepts and went from there. A couple of interesting stories about working with the ESRB though, but I guess we can get to that when we talk about the game's contents itself.
This game has a pretty big marker of having the ESRB look at it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just a classic little story of just a solid little PS2 game made by like just a team that at this time had a good couple of projects under their belt. And I guess that is where we can start with the Punisher. So,
yeah. You said in the Red Faction episode, I listened to that the other day, and you'd said the Punisher, because you mentioned the Punisher in that episode, and you said it wouldn't make a top 10 list of comic book video games, but it might make a top 20. And I actually think...
Did I argue against that?
I'm not sure. It was just sort of said, and I think in a vacuum. I don't know if it necessarily went any further than that. But actually, I think I would disagree. I think it might make your top 10. And I think actually for the kind of the reasons we've just spoken about is I think it's about the most sort of video gamey comic book game you could possibly hope to make. There's almost nothing in this that really relies on comics or knowing anything about comics. It's just a corridor shooter with the name slapped on the front. And purely by circumstance, it works flawlessly in that capacity.
I had a lot of fun with this one. I enjoyed my time with this game a lot.
I'm gonna say my piece quickly, which is that I think when I said that it would fall out the top 10 comment, that might have been me factoring in like all of the Arkham games and maybe like all of the Spider-Man games or whatever. Yeah. No, having now recently played this game, I think this would be it would be number 10, or on a good day, this would be number 9 on the list. Yeah, this is really good. And like in a way is exactly what you said, where it is a capital V, capital G video game of... Yeah. And again, like this has been an interesting thing for me and Snake of, technically we're on the police brutality beat at the moment, but this and Urban Chaos Riot Response have something that I adore in FPS games that nobody does, which is it has a fucking high score system. There's a combo system. You play this like a racing game where you are hitting your lines, you are playing as cleanly as possible. And something that when I started the game up and like, because this is my first time playing this, I had no idea that was the case. I just assumed looking at footage that it was basically like diet
kill fast.
I thought it was basically Diet Pepsi Max Payne, which kind of it.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
It's more like, Pepsi Max Payne, I would say.
I mean, yeah, it's an it's an angry guy going around punishing criminals in a trench coat in New York City.
Because criminals killed his wife and child. Like it is extremely Max Payne.
Yeah.
Max Payne and Max
All
Payne
this
2 had already
Punisher
come
Max
out by
Payne.
now. Yeah. There's absolutely tons of that influence. You even do the kind of John Woo diving. There's no bullet time, but you do the kind of there's the kind of movement. There's no doubt that's a huge part of the influence here.
You can dive in this game, but you hit the ground like a guy of Frank's size. Like, this is not a man who has jumps.
It was funny watching the developers play through the game because when the prompt came up in the tutorial to dive, he said, "I'm not doing." The Punisher wouldn't do that. And so, even they were kind of aware of, you literally just threw a dive in here because of, the Max Payne influence.
Yeah. Oh, and dual wielding. But the dual wielding in this game is nuts because it's not just pistols.
You can
dual wield shotguns.
Yeah.
He will, you can fire both shotguns at the same time. And there's a beautiful animation of Frank throwing the shotguns in the air, catching them, pumping them both, and then throwing them back into his hands. It's awesome.
Yeah. God.
And you can take hostages while one-handing a shotgun. I love it.
When I said it was like Max Payne, I think in your head you just think of the simplest version of that. It's no. The Punisher has way more go. This is New York Minute mode from Max Payne, and they built an entire game around it. Despite the fact that it hasn't got a timer in it, but it does feel like the high scoring system does push to play kind of smart and fast, but.
I actually disagree. I think because there's no timer on the combo system, so I played this game for score, and it took me several levels to realize, this scoring system is punishing me. It's pushing me into playing methodically and tactically, and this is a Punisher thing where it's not really about style. Yeah. It's about fucking murdering people, and in the smartest way possible. Or the brutalist way. That's the mixture there.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I actually found a little bit frustrating with adapting the Punisher into a game. So, it's a very competent shooter, and when you realise that taking damage is the one thing that breaks your combo meter, you then become very, 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 very defensive. So it's popping around corners, doors and corners. You're playing it like a Rainbow Six type game.
You're playing this game at walking speed because
100%, every
time you don't have a hostage, you're like, fuck, my combo is in serious jeopardy right now.
So you're walking everywhere, you're leaning out headshots at a time. And what I really wanted is just to run into a room with 2 SMGs and just blast the place up like would happen in a film. I wanted to see what Thomas Jane does in the Punisher film, because he certainly isn't, doors and corners. He isn't like a Stockholm Navy SEAL, So I think that although it's very good and very competent, I kind of would have liked more of a fluid, I guess maybe what you'd call an Uncharted style, where you're not in cover, but just dipping in between melee and firing and throwing grenades and just kind of generally being a one-man army.
Or
didn't feel
a
that
combat system that is kind of asking you to, hey, tank some, more of a question of Frank is pissed. He's gonna tank some damage if it means he gets his hands on someone.
Yes.
I have exactly the same issue with, and it's funny because it's also a game where you can dual wield fucking shotguns. Wolfenstein: The New Order, where you start that game up and you assume that the game is what Doom 2016 was going to be, where by pushing forward and being aggressive, you get help from doing that, and you can stay in the action from doing so. But that is also a game that encourages you to play a lot more safely, use your cover, slow down, line up your shots and stuff like that. And funny that just both these games have this, you go in with your sort of kind of thoughts of being, well, this is how the Punisher should play. But the game does encourage you for trying to play.
Here's the thing as well. Once you have the medals, you can kind of just cut loose fuck score. Literally all score really gets you is
more
upgrades, because this game has a very tenuous upgrade system.
That's true, yeah.
But I did play for score though, and it's funny because I had the opposite thing where I was kind of annoyed at it for the first several levels, but then I kind of got into this weird rhythm of playing it I'm gonna put the fear of God into him. I'm gonna cover corners. I'm gonna play Frank as this ultra like mean, tactical, implaceable machine. And I was like, I'm starting to have fun with it. Maybe I got beaten down into it.
It would make more sense if they had remade this game around the Netflix Punisher, who seems like he's more in that mindset versus
definitely.
the Thomas Jane Punisher, who is very. It's funny that you both said that you watched the Thomas Jane Punishers because, for this episode, I watched the Dolph Lundgren Punisher.
I also watched that.
Okay. Snake, you haven't seen the Dolph Lundgren Punisher,
No,
but you saw.
I only learned it existed when I was looking up Punisher stuff.
I had this on
VHS
VHS when I was a kid.
It is the ultimate VHS movie because it's made by like New World Cinema, like in their Australian branch, and you can tell because like literally every single side character or character actor in that film is inexplicably an Aussie, but fair enough. But yeah, Dolph as Frank, it was an interesting choice. His mascara beard, probably an even more interesting choice for that.
Do you know what? I realised I had a great moment where I was like, this was shot probably on a videotape camera, right? It probably wasn't shot on film.
No.
So the resolution, the screen size, all of that just would have, that's one of those cheap makeup effects to make him look like he's got stubble. Yeah. And in the HD era, you can really see the boundaries. But what I realised is it actually made his face look like a skull because they'd filled the cheeks in dark. So I was like, you can completely recontextualize this because he doesn't have the skull on the outfit in that film. It's the only film where he doesn't have the skull on the front. He's just wearing black tactical armor. And I was like, this Frank is so fucking legit. He's gone with the Punisher logo just on his face.
Yeah.
This is striking fear into those cowardly criminals.
Okay, I just want to mention it because this game is kind of a continuation of the Thomas Jane film. But when I rewatched the Thomas Jane film, I had such an eye roll when I got to the bit of, this is how he got the shirt.
His son buys him a shirt.
His son was like went down to the market in like I can't even remember what country they were like holidaying at with his family, but it's like, oh yeah, this guy was selling this shirt down the market. He says the symbol wards off like evil.
Yeah.
And then his family gets shot up and he just finds it waterlogged on the beach and he's like, okay, it's the last gift from my dead son.
Do you mind if we quickly sidebar the episode to talk about how funny it is of like, because Matt, you've probably read a couple more Punisher comics than me and we can tie this into the game itself, but like, I just find it so funny that just this character who, okay, what's his backstory? Ex-Vietnam vet, his family is killed by, Italian, by mobsters overseas.
Yeah.
And basically he brings the war to them. Okay, fair enough. So a guy like that, he's going to be like he is in Vietnam. He's going to be covert. He's going to be hidden. Oh no, he's going to have a gigantic skull on his... But not only just a skull, he's also going to have a matching white bandolier belt that looks like skeleton teeth. So that's going to be his like calling
and white gloves and white boots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. In his original design, he has white gloves as well.
Yeah,
and he doesn't wear a mask.
It's the one bit of trivia I have. We're talking about the origins of Punisher, like a Spider-Man villain who was who would gun down jaywalkers. And they then had to retcon into it like, oh no, he was drugged at the time. He wouldn't really just gun down jaywalkers. Only real criminals.
My favorite like Punisher character trait is that, and Snake, I feel like you probably know this, but Matty, you more so of just all of the Punisher crossovers, as in like, the Punisher meets the Punisher meets Archie. Punisher meets Eminem. Every single one of those stories starts on exactly the same thing, which is a misunderstanding of just somebody going to Frank and the Kingpin going to Frank and saying, "Oh, Spider-Man killed all these people. You got to stop him." All right. Oh, Archie looks exactly the same as a criminal, and hey, I guess he's hiding out in Riverdale. Eminem. Oh, Eminem killed all these people. You have to believe me. Winky wink. And just Frank doesn't do any research. He just goes, "Oh, that guy's a killer. All right, I'm arming up. I'm off to go get him."
Yeah, Frank gets his news from Facebook, and he doesn't.
He genuinely
does. He's not
does.
a source citation man. He doesn't care.
No, he doesn't.
He's just in Facebook groups with all the other 40-year-old dads. And
all the gun dads.
His intel network.
He just runs the groups. Yeah.
Oh, Barry on WhatsApp said that this guy's a paedophile. I better go
murder him.
I better go get in my car.
Ah, he was a paediatrician. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Justice was served, probably.
No, exactly. We don't know what that guy would have done. Thank you, Frank.
Frank, you firebombed the children hospital.
I heard one of them had some crack. I needed to be sure.
God. So just the Punisher is just a character I just find, like... I find him funny. Like, calling him stupid isn't quite right, because it's like...
I think he's a character. I know this is the oddest way of putting it, but I liked I think a lot of people did. I liked the Daredevil, Netflix show, and I watched The Punisher. It was okay. It got crap near the end. But I think he's a character who you can take seriously with a very short shelf life.
100%.
The moment he's been in business for like 10 years, it's like, come the fuck on. You're ridiculous now.
There's a lot for us to unpack here, I think, with this. So, with regards to the comics, I think he's a great character as a villain. Like you said, Daredevil season 2 is peak Punisher, because he turns up. He's a vigilante who's completely got the wrong end of the stick, and he's the bad guy. And it works perfectly.
He's the foil. He's the one who kind of makes the main character kind of reflect on,
and it's great.
Is my approach going to work? Is it right? Is it... No, this guy's just off his fucking nut.
Yeah. And it lifts stuff from the Punisher Max comic book series where, the Daredevil's kind of caught up to him, and Punisher goes, your problem, Daredevil, is you catch criminals and then you let them go. You let them just commit crimes again. Whereas when I do what I do, they don't get back up again. And you're supposed to be horrified when someone speaks like that, and somehow we can still recontextualize that man as heroic. We can still somehow say, no, he does have good enough qualities that we can make a show about him. And I'm like, I completely disagree. I don't think there's anything redeemable about him whatsoever. He's an absolutely insane bad guy, and he works perfectly well as an insane bad guy. I just can't see why we need to have him as a hero.
It is the weird thing about just kind of how Marvel has handled him in regards to it. And I think it's one of those things of like, because when people think of the Punisher, they very rarely think of him in context of, oh yeah, he tried to assassinate Spider-Man. Because I think, and especially with this game, is that like, the Punisher stories that most people think of and what this game adapted from is stuff like, from the Punisher Max and whatever, all the Garth Ennis stuff, where it is his war against crime families. And so when it is put in the context of, well, he's a bad guy, but he's going up against worse guys, it does kind of end up reframing Frank as just like, oh, well, I don't agree with his means, but who else is going to do it? Because the game does have other characters turn up, but it is still very much Frank runs the show.
Yeah, very much. And this is one thing that I thought was really weird.
It is one of those things where we're in different gradations of how much we know about comics, and I am the total outsider, but I just think about Marvel New York, and I think, okay, how the fuck is Frank I don't actually think about it that deeply because I know comic book entertainment, but it's just funny to think, okay, Frank, you just letting that guy just keep on trucking when you run into him.
This is exactly it, right? This is exactly it. Exactly my point. So if we want to consider the Marvel Universe as one big contiguous universe, we have to imagine that the Punisher, on the daily, is rubbing up against not just Daredevil, but Spider-Man and the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, because they're all based in the same city.
Yeah.
And this guy is going about straight up murdering people. Like every iteration of the character basically gives him an average kill count of about 50 people a year, or sometimes it's 100, right? So he is one of the most prolific mass murderers in history. And every now and again, Iron Man turns up and he's like, what do you need, Frank? How can I be of assistance? Like, they're not bringing him in. They're letting him do this. It doesn't make
There'd be
sense.
a very good lawyer storyline and just... Hey, we dug into Stark Industries and we found out there is just kind of a budget set aside for Frank. What's the deal with that? What's the conspiracy behind which the heroes are turning their eyes, they're averting their gaze from Frank?
This guy blew up several Italian restaurants and you gave him Iron Man tech. What? Why?
Tony Stark, you gave this Italian restaurant a bad review and then the Punisher visited it next week. What?
And that's another critical thing as well, is all of the bad guys that Frank is so incensed about, all of them have accents that could be considered non-domestic.
Yeah, no, me and Snake have I think we've spoken about this before.
Slightly problematic.
But funnily enough, because we did a table set campaign once, which was...
I knew this would come up.
I'm only gonna very briefly mention it, but like some of the characters were. It was funny. It was based on DC Comics, and then me being a cheat, I put a bunch of some characters I put in who were based on Marvel characters. Well, some of the players kind of did a similar thing, and there was a Punisher analog in it. And during the
it was me.
So Snake's character was a sort of a Punisher analog, basically, but sort of the early days and a bit more lo-fi. And there was just a session where I joked at just the thing of, he only goes after he only goes after Italians and Irish people. and like they was told said as a joke, but then like you do look at the Punisher comics. I mean, you look at the Punisher game and it's like Mega Man, where it's like, okay, first you take out Italian man, then you take out Irishman, then you take out Japanese man. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
It was funny though, because I remember in that campaign when that was dropped on him, I remember just kind of in character him just being really upset, like, no, I'm not racist. It's just I just happened to go after the mafias.
Every crime show ever, you have to have at least one episode where they go after the white supremacists. You just have to have it for balance.
Yeah, that's
right.
You do, or like a shady businessman.
The episode where they have to go, look, he's not racist.
Yeah. But
Punisher fights the Klan.
There we go.
And it's just traced over the Superman comic.
I got to imagine Garth Ennis.
10,000%
Garth Ennis wrote that comic of Frank goes after the Klan, right? I feel like that's probably something he's written. But God. Which does kind of bring us nicely back to kind of talking about the game and what we were saying earlier about like, when you think about the Punisher now and you think about him in the context of the wider MCU, just as a character, you go, this sort of breaks the fiction a little bit. And you do feel a little bit of that in the Netflix stuff when they were saying, oh, this is all technically part of the MCU, before they sort of scratched a line through that and said, no, that's separate. But now they're teasing, oh, well, actually, Kingpin, maybe the guy from the Punisher kind of stuff. But because these games are all sort of set in separate continuities, and the thing that I sort of appreciate with this is that other Marvel characters do turn up, but the game is very much Frank's show. And so, like, I don't think the game particularly celebrates... Well, I mean, it celebrates Frank in the same way that every single video game protagonist is celebrated through their games, because at the end of the day, it's a power fantasy, and at the end of the day, it's like, you can't browbeat people while also making... Well, I guess you can browbeat people while making entertainment, but it's a tricky balance sort of thing to do. But like, I kind of think it's with this, it's like the tone that they go for. You're never really like
they do not stop
it feels
for
like
a second.
It does feel on the goofier end, like not insane, but it's like. You got the Russian and he throws you through your house.
And
which you got Marnucci and she's screaming at you.
Yeah. No, it's... I mean, the tone is established from the moment that when they teach you how to take a human shield, it is literally a woman, a purse snatcher on the street. And you go up to the guy and you throw him into a bin. And despite the fact that you're the Punisher, who's meant to be this like covert mercenary, the woman goes... Oh, geez, thank you, Punisher. It's oh, so we're going for so the tone is Spider-Man. Okay, right.
He is a local celebrity.
Right? Yeah, he is.
This is the most amped up power fantasy, isn't it? Because this is, I mean, again, probably getting too deep into the politics too soon, but the Punisher being held up as this kind of like, this weird kind of hero to all those like weird cops about, he's a hero. He can do the things that we can, and all this kind of stuff. You go, no, he's doing things that you really shouldn't be doing. But the idea of, in Frank's world, everything is just black and white, right? There are just two types of people. There are criminals and there are the innocent. The innocent must be protected, and the criminals must be killed.
They must be punished.
They must be
James,
punished.
you said you throw him into a bin. It's even more funny when you But it's even more like just kind of over the top when you grab the guy, snap his neck, and the woman doesn't even go, "Oh Christ!" She just goes, "Oh my God, you're the Punisher."
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Punisher.
I'd recognize that neck snap anywhere.
Yeah. There's no nuance. There's nothing complex about these people. You know, they have no other lives other than being criminals. They've got no redeeming qualities, and it's why it comes back to, I think, as I was saying, it's a very, very video gamey comic book game.
Yes.
Because the actual comics do think about this from time to time. They do actually think, is Frank a baddie? Whereas the kind, you know, and the Thomas Jane film does it a little bit, and the Dolph Lundgren film does it a bit more actually.
Yeah.
I will say this game, the closest this game gets to the kind of moral ambiguity is, so there's an interrogation mechanic. This is how you recover health. It's like, imagine, you know, the Doom 2016, if it was moving at like 0.1% speed.
If it was the glory kill system, but it generated a WarioWare mini game where you have to tap the button every single time. You have to kind of Tony Hawk. Yeah,
you know,
the
grind.
balance bar.
You got a balance bar like jamming a gun in someone's face, or there's a lot of bespoke environmental ones.
Pushing a pillar drill into their head or something.
But this is also a collectible, because like collecting dog tags in Metal Gear Solid 2, some of them will randomly have like a flashback line where they'll say like, "I have a family." And then you can actually spare them. You can throw them away, or you can kill them. And there is a unique line for like sparing criminals like that, but you don't get any points for that. So.
There is also a unique line for killing the criminal. But he has there's a unique line. He has a zinger lined up for every single thing that a criminal could say in this game.
I wish there was more, because like there are so many bespoke ones, but I swear there's like only one environmental kill where he has a line where, if you use a grinder to kill someone, Frank will go, "He was a good worker, kept his nose to the grindstone."
Yeah,
it's like,
fantastic.
That fucking hell, Frank.
He's dead,
Frank. But then you throw someone in a chroma, and he doesn't have a pun for that.
Well, no, the guy, I think of that because of the guy who says, "I have a family," and you just shoot him in the head and you go, "Not anymore." It's like, fucking hell.
They're not all good lines.
No.
In fact, a lot of them are like, they don't even rate as dad jokes. They're just, "Frank, you're just kind of a prick, man."
They're sad.
Yeah,
jokes.
right. And they're just very, very sad. And I think, like you were saying, James, like perhaps you couldn't spend the entire game like punishing the player, for doing this sort of thing. But contemporary games from the time, like God of War was one I thought of, Shadow of the Colossus, even Max Payne, they don't necessarily have it in the game, but there's definitely a moment where you as the player evaluate what you're doing and you go, "Wait a minute, am I the bad guy?" Whereas in this, never happens. You're never confronted with it, and it's kind of bad, but it's also kind of great because Frank doesn't think like that. He never considers himself the baddie, which is what makes him such a great villain.
There's no diegetic moment where, like,
none.
I mean, I frankly wouldn't want it. I frankly wouldn't want it in this game. But like the close you get is there's no scene like in the Marvel Punisher TV show where like he thinks he's gunned down a room full of women and goes fucking mental. Just like goes, that's it. Yeah. The gig's up. I'm turning myself in. Which is your Frank. Does Frank have feelings moment?
It was funny that you mentioned those PlayStation games because, and I got to shout them out because they've shouted out our podcast a few times despite being way bigger than us. But Sutton Rotten, Jacob Geller and Blake Lively's podcast, where they go through. Sometimes they talk about shooters, but they mostly, the games that unites all of them together is like these kind of gross and quote rotten games. And the game that I kept thinking of when I was playing this is kind of like, how would you do realistic Punisher was Manhunt.
Oh, 100% Manhunt. Yeah.
The Rockstar. And again, it's funny because we've talked about this a few times, Snake, of like, you've always kind of missed that era of between the GTA games where they use their engine and use their kind of power to basically make all of these kind of smaller AA size games that like no one can get away with. And,
I mean, it's like Matty was talking about earlier with, you know, budgets and crew sizes and dev times is like Rockstar. The reason Rockstar still does have respect for me is I do get the thing of there is so much they could do, so much more they could do, but this era is really just it's caps them into, right, we're going to spend 8 years making another GTA game because that's going to that's a seller. Rather than, oh, we're going to make The Warriors, we're going to make Bully. Because Bully 2 was in dev and got cancelled. We're going to do an engine test with Ping Pong. It's like, man, the studio was cooler back then.
The last game that it feels like, hey, you got into the party late, so you're still cool, was Red Dead. Where, GCA, like, it was using the GCA engine and stuff like that. And obviously the first Red Dead Redemption was made by what eventually became Rockstar San Diego, but it was published by Capcom, of all people, funnily enough.
Yeah, they wanted to make a cowboy game, and they were like, well, let's get a pre-established name. Yeah. Hey, you guys made this Red Dead Revolver. We'll just buy that name.
Yeah, and so you still have that kind of feeling of, oh, you guys are film nerds, and you want to kind of, like, dip into all these different genres. And Manhunt was basically them being like, again, it's funny, like, if you put the Punisher and Manhunt, like, side by side, like, third-person adventure games, ding. Unique kill animations, ding. Based on kind of cinematic sources, ding. But
hey, you throw Manhunt 2 into the mix, massively censored.
Yeah, ding, 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 ding. Yeah, and it's funny because, like, they're both going for exactly the same mechanics. It's just that the way that Manhunt is built around the fact that you are, like, a contestant in this snuff film. It's like the entire thing's being narrated by Brian Cox. It's like, oh no, this game makes me feel, like, genuinely ill. And it's not beating you over the head being like, this is bad. You just know it's bad from the tone, from how it is constructed. And the Punisher could have, like, dipped into that, but the Volition were like, no, comic book game.
I would consider this game, like, the reason I don't have a problem with, like, no moral ambiguity is because I play this and I kind of register immediately, like, the moment you kill that criminal, and then you've got two gangsters up on the roof who make this dumb joke where they say, like, hey, it's the Punisher. Yeah. Want to come up here, you big baby? And then they just walk away and go, what if he actually does come up here? And I'm like, this is dark camp. This is like knowingly stupid grittiness.
Oh yeah,
It's like it's leaning in on how brutal and stupid it is. It's like it is pure turn your brain off brutality.
Very much that. Yeah.
From the moment the woman says "Thank you, Punisher," you go, okay, I know.
Yeah, that's it. I'm all in. We don't need to stop and think about this anymore. Like there's and there is never going to be an opportunity. They could have, it would have fit with the contemporary games of the time. They could have had some sort of rudimentary morality system. They could have spent time and effort of going, oh, was that a good thing or a bad thing? Something like Fable or like Deus Ex, maybe, like where you have the right thing to do and the wrong thing, and then maybe some different things happen in the story. But they just went, nah, everything he does is the right thing. Everything he does is the right thing. And it's actually kind of great because it works perfectly, like, I think, diegetically, like you said, Snake, like, this is how Frank thinks. So it's perfect.
Frank sees the world. Frank points his gun at an innocent and he sees a big red no symbol. But he points a gun at an enemy, and it may as well be a big thumbs up.
A big green thumbs up. A big okay symbol. Like, yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, the most complex scenario in this game. I don't know if we're going into the story. I don't know that we need to. So we can maybe break down,
I guess we can quickly breeze through because the story itself isn't that, like...
It's not that big a deal. It's like every level kind of plays the same. There's maybe a few unique elements. Yeah. But the most complex scenario in this game is bizarre to me. So, at some point you break into the Nucci's mansion.
Yes.
And you get blown into the basement. And they've got a prisoner down there. And you interrogate him and he's like, they've got a secret thing down, him and his friend had been captured. His friend has been killed. You find him in a cage. He tells you the location of, like, a secret hatch to go further down. And Frank's like, how do you know that? And he's like, I heard them opening it. And it's like, okay. You go down there, you blast a few people. And one mechanic this game has is some people have skulls over them, which means they have special information. So it's kind of an encouragement to, like, try and keep them alive to last, take them hostage, interrogate them. If you interrogate him, it's like, okay, why is that guy in a cage? And it's like, he sold heroin to Marnucci's grandkids, and then it's just the symbol just flips from, okay, you can kill him now. He sold heroin.
Jesus.
That's the most involved scenario in this game is this one hostage who you could save, and if you don't interrogate him, that guy gets off scot-free.
Yeah.
There are actually a few. I almost want to say sim moments in Punisher, like a bit like that. The dude in the cage. There's like every stage will have one or two guys where they'll be the last guy left and like, hey, don't kill me, Punisher. And so like you just interrogate them instead. They give you like, they'll be like, oh, I'll go ahead and I'll tell the guys that you're gone. And then he'll like clear out the next area.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of little bits where you can create a different
had that in
route.
the zoo. Yeah, I was. They gave me like a special toilet interrogation to give a guy a swirly, and he was like,
and then
if you let me go and I'll tell him you can go this direction. They won't.
Yeah, that's it. And some of them it will just be like, oh, there's a secret weapon locker, like round the corner behind a secret door. And then, all of a sudden a panel will become active on the wall and you can open a door and there's like just a load of guns behind there. Yeah. So like there's a few of these, they're not fully sim, but like there's just a couple of little bits where, if you don't kill everybody, you get some mild benefits, but also it doesn't really matter anyway and it doesn't really make any massive difference.
No, and
so
it's a
you
shame
can just kill them all anyway.
It'd be cool if the game did encourage, like, oh, can you go for the game without killing anyone? But then, like, going back to the zoo, to go through a gate, the guy says, oh, no, in that gate, Punisher, there's some bad guys out there. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll kill him.
Yeah. No, it's even Frank is like, if I kill everyone, will you let me through? And he's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Oh, Frank's just like, oh, I gotta do this shit again. It's just like, Frank, is your favorite thing to do. Like,
Frank, come on, crack a smile. You get to live your life doing what you love. If you love what you do, you don't work. You don't work.
Yeah, exactly. You don't work a single day in your life.
Jump in to the end of the game, the final level on Riker's Island. And there's the big reveal, and like Frank's like created this scenario where he gets arrested so he can end up on Riker's Island, and he's like, they're gonna instigate a riot and they're gonna break out the bad guys during the confusion. And they're like, oh, okay, wow, well, what are you gonna do about that, Frank? And he just like looks straight into the camera and he goes, I'm gonna kill all the inmates.
I forgot about that until you mentioned it, but yeah, that is the one time I was like, that's a bit much.
Yeah,
the objective. It's like, okay, Frank, they were already in prison.
Yeah, they're already repaying their debt to society, Frank. Not enough.
Frank, some of these guys are rehabilitated. We were going to let him out some more.
It's his last day. Yeah.
And it was his last day of being in prison.
I do like the idea of a prisoner going, it's my last day.
There's a bit where you can go down to death row. Like, these guys are on death row, and you just go down and blast them. And he's like, I hope they keep those animals in the cages. Like, this guy is nuts. But yeah, the objective that comes up on screen. I forgot about that
when I was saying like the camp brutality, because even that made me pause and go,
that's too much.
Okay, look, I get you're the Punisher, but like, you're jumping the gun a bit.
I was debating quickly mentioning the plot because I wanted to because that bit made my eyebrows fly off my like. At this point, I was just kind of like, I was doing like the high level, big brain thing of, oh, well, if you treat this game as camp, it's like it's like ultra violence. It's like Crank kind of thing. But then that moment happens and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
you have walked off the campgrounds into bear infested
Volition
woods.
got a little bit too close to the edge with that when they had cut themselves pretty hard on the edge.
I mean, we'll go deeper into the story in a moment, but I think the story has a very funny arc with that, where the game starts and it opens and you're fighting mobsters, and it's very low level, street level stuff. And then the middle of the game goes a bit more nuts, where you're fighting alongside Nick Fury, and you go to Stark Towers, and it gets a bit sci-fi, and you kind of forget. And the early game kind of dark camp kind of just becomes straight up hero camp, but also you are playing as the most miserable murderous man alive, gutting people like fish in Stark Industries. And then you go to Riker's Island, and that line just smacks you in the face with, we have jumped back past Dark Camp into, you're just a fucking nut. You're just like, there is no redemption here.
When you said that the game that this is most like is hatred, that is the point of the game that it is most like hatred. Because up until that point, it is very much Max. Like, if Activision had made Max, if Neversoft had made Max Payne, is what this game is kind of like until then.
Yeah.
Until Frank says, well, I know they're already in prison, but so am I, so sorry.
Yeah. God.
That's the most whacked justification for him killing people as well, because a lot of these other things, if you make a game and it's set during a war. So like, I don't know, like it could be a fictional war, but World War II would be a really good one, right?
Yeah.
Your main character is a GI in the 101st Airborne, and he lands in France. Now, as you're going down the streets of France, you can just kill everybody, right? You don't have to think, because they're gonna be the baddies. So that you're removed from any kind of moral quandary. You can just enjoy the game for what it is. You don't have to worry about, well, what if that was a good Nazi? Like, you don't have to have that thought. It's fine. They're all baddies. And the thing about transplanting that type of gameplay into Frank's world is Frank thinks the same thing about everybody he meets in the street. So he's like, they're all baddies anyway. So to him, this is a war, and it's really good. But also what I noticed is nearly every level is just someone's house. Like, there's like the Nucci's mansion, or you go to like, oh, there's like a freaking zoo. Like, these aren't places.
Or the bar where you just shoot
or
up
a bar. Or a ship, or, you know, like, or somebody's private island.
Bathroom.
Yeah, like these aren't like war. These aren't theaters of war. Frank is invading people's spaces and then killing them, and it's like it is hilarious. But like, there's not any moral grey areas here. Like, he's literally always doing the bad thing, and he's just
the only grey area is when you do an execution.
It is like probably the smartest thing I will ever say on Bullet Time, which is like, when you read The Punisher as a comic book character, at least there is that separation between, well, he is a fictional, silly character. He doesn't exist in the real world. With a video game, you do have to shake hands, though, and be like, me and the Punisher were working together to get... And so you do have to kind of like... Again, I mean, this game is heightened and it is stupid, but it is very much like, okay, yeah, no, I do have to buy into this fantasy of what is happening. And I guess almost it does kind of... I'm not saying that this game invented it. I think it's just the weird way that culture has gone. But just the fact that there are... Chris Kyle kicked off the whole thing of, oh no, I am the real life Punisher. This is me. Like, I do what Frank does, and so ergo I am also a Marvel character. It's like... But
what was I trying to... I was trying to think of stuff.
I was going to say, we mentioned it talking about the story stuff. It is very weird that this game does have a, quote, Christmas episode, as in... that one episode of a TV show where they go somewhere, they go on holiday for a little bit. But Frank's idea of a holiday is he goes to a fucking tropical island that isn't New York to just fight a fucking war against a US colonel that he doesn't know anything about this guy. But
Yep.
And then he teams up with Nick Fury. No, not the one from the films, the white Nick Fury that no one ever thinks of.
There was a film. Did you ever see the Nick Fury
the
film?
Hoff, right?
With the Hoff, yeah. Same era as Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, that's kind of what they were riffing on, was that, like, because the Hoff, Nick Fury, they tried to make him like, you know, OSS James Bond, essentially, where it's like, he'll go behind enemy lines kind of stuff. Versus like the Nick Fury one where, you know, he's the guy in the chair, kind of Captain Picard style stuff, which... It is interesting that they haven't brought... Well, I haven't read like a ton of Marvel comics, so I don't know if they have floated that with the Sam Jackson version of the character. But yeah, I don't know, making him like a kind of a spy guy again. It's just, I don't know, something they could dip into a little bit. And yeah, it's funny, they have always paired him with Frank. Because... Yeah,
because there's the side-scrolling beat-em-up, isn't there?
Yeah, we didn't mention that at the beginning of the episode. Like, this isn't the first Punisher adaptation. There was also... like when Capcom basically when Capcom seemed to be like on top of the world, and they made like a side-scrolling beat 'em up about literally anything. Like they made D&D ones. They made one on a independent comic called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs that no one has ever
a great game
outside of the Capcom game. Like they would just do it on anything, and they did one for the Punisher as well. There's also, it was funny that you were saying earlier about Frank being like, you know, the game pushes you to play in this particular style, but, you know, you just kind of want to be like a sitting turret. There is an NES game where it is literally just a side-scrolling, like, shoot 'em up. Like, it is
I've seen videos of that one. I've heard that one's not very good.
No,
like
it's a bit of an
Operation Wolf type
AGN
thing?
classics. I'm trying to think of anything that we haven't quite touched on with this.
Have we spoken enough about torturing? Because I think this really was put forward.
We
as
did
a
talk
USP
about how
of the
they've
game.
been censored with some of the bespoke interrogations.
I can go with a little bit into how sort of the torture was covered in this game. I will ask a very stupid question, though, in relation to how smart a conversation has been so far, which is, what was everybody's favorite unique torture in this game?
I like the shark.
Yeah, the shark's great.
Yeah, the shark's good. I'm like just a ragdoll guy, so I just kind of like throwing people off of stuff. I'm very simple.
Yeah, I absolutely love doing a successful interrogation and then killing them afterwards, and usually in the funniest way possible. So in the prison riot level, I like to do an interrogation, just a normal, regular one, and then throw them into a burning mattress. Just because it's absolutely it's horrible. It's the grimmest thing imaginable. Just throw them into the river, throw them into a wall. Brilliant. I like the what's it called? The piranha tank in the zoo.
The piranha tank
really
is
good.
Fucking brutal. Yeah. That is so mean.
Yeah, that's in the comic. There's actually a bit in the comic where he goes into a zoo and he chucks some dude into a tank of piranhas. So I was like, that's a nice little nod.
There's a lot of animal kills in this game beyond just the zoo level, because you also got a rhino in the zoo.
Oh,
level.
okay. So yeah, I was gonna say. So my favorite torture is Rambi the Rhino. It is so fucking stupid. Of just like Frank just putting up against the rhino's walls, and then when the rhino just sticks his big ass horn through this guy's chest, Frank goes, "Thanks."
It's the friendliest he is with any other character in the game.
He loves animals.
That's it.
Frank.
Yeah. In the Nucci mansion, because they're like big game hunters, I guess.
Yeah.
There's like they've got like stuffed bears, but they have a bunch of primed bear traps on the walls in their house.
Very smart design choice.
So you can just push dudes into them, and it's absolutely brilliant. But like this is where they live. They have primed bear traps on the walls in their living room.
I guess it's in case Spider-Man breaks in.
I guess.
A really big horsefly goes through the window.
Can I ask a question, actually?
Yeah, sure.
Before we just go back to the end point of all this torture thing, does Punisher have, like, any good villains? Or does he just get, like, everyone else's sloppy seconds?
So
no, they're all
the majority
in this
of his
game,
villains are like
they're all Daredevil villains.
They're all Daredevil
Spider-Man
guys, because he gets because who appears in it? So Bushwhacker appears in this game, who started as a Daredevil villain.
Yeah.
You see Bushwhacker pretty early on, because again, talking about the whole Spider-Man-ness of the game, and it's also very Thomas Jane film feeling of just like Frank goes out every night and he kills 1,000 people, but then, oh no, there's the Spider-Man moment of, Frank, I've kidnapped, oh, you don't have a girlfriend, oh, you don't have a wife, oh, you don't have a daughter. Frank, I've kidnapped your neighbor.
Someone who lives down the hall from you.
Yeah, I kidnapped the woman who lives down the hall from you. This is your...
Just them sending messages, Frank, please get some friends, you lonely bastard. We need leverage.
And just even when you save the woman, she's just like, she doesn't go like, Frank, why the fuck did they kidnap me? She seems to realize, oh yeah, you're the guy who goes around New York killing fucking gang members and criminals. Hey, sometimes this stuff happens. It is like, again, it is very Spider-Man of just like, Mary Jane got kidnapped by the Sandman.
It's funny in the context of this being a non-committal sort of sequel to the Thomas Jane film. I mean, it's not, because the Russian just turns up again. Like, he dies in the movie. But maybe it's just like, oh, yeah, Joan's just used to this. It's just like, this is, he keeps the rent low. It's like, occasionally Frank just goes and fires some bullets into the air so that the rent stays down, so I can just live with that.
I like that bit where the Russian goes to Frank's apartment. That's in the comic and the film as well. So that one event, that's one of the few things that's in all three of those 2000s Punisher moments. And when I was playing it, I was like, this is like the bit in Resi 3 when Nemesis goes to Jill's apartment.
And they've done it in the style of like, what's it called? Like, it's like a QTE, it's very God of War style QTE sequence.
It's a QTE sequence, yeah. And it's actually really fun, because like, you're setting them up, so you're setting up all these little traps for the Russian. Yeah. I thought that was really fun. It was a fun little sequence.
I was going to say...
the boss fights in this game fucking blow besides that. They are bad.
We'll talk about the other shitty boss fights, but it is funny that, like, I think something that I found appealing about this game, and I think me and Snake have this same thing of, like, we love, like, Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan goes into a unique location and basically turns everything into a combat.
To me, like... The point of an action scene is how can I turn this environment into a whirlwind of chaos
and like
destruction.
It is my favorite level of this game is Central Park Zoo because I'm just a fan of like when animals turn up in games because they're just like kind of stupid guys. So just Frank using animals to just torch people, I just think is like this is like cartoon shit. One thing I wish that they had adopted from the comics in that was that isn't there a bit where he's in like Central Park Zoo and they throw him into like the polar bear enclosure? Yeah, and he's like, I need an idea fast. And he looks at the polar bear and he goes, I'm sorry for doing this. And he just socks the polar bear in the face in order to get it angry enough to attack some guys.
So, yeah, and a funny thing there is this game has a lot of Punisher unlockables.
It sure does.
Being like newspaper clippings. And that comic panel of Frank punching a polar bear, that's one of the unlockable clippings. Another fun thing about those clippings, which, Matty, you might have seen it, I saw it emulating the PS2 version. They're super low res, so on a CRT, on 480p, or we didn't have 480p. I can't remember what our PAL resolution was.
I think
320
or 480. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So 480 was NTSC.
Yeah,
we had a higher
576i.
576. Yeah. But we had a lower refresh rate.
Yeah.
Had to sacrifice, but. If you can clearly read these, and they're just game design documents. So on the first ones you unlock is them
just
writing about
Ipsum.
the scoring system. Is like, how do we increase replayability of the Punisher game? Like their lorem ipsum is just like
it's just the
game design documents.
That's so good. Yeah, that's wicked.
So in regards to the torture scenes in this game, that was like the big selling point, down to the fact that. So about a year out from this game, 2004, they interviewed one of the writers of this game, who was the guy that they actually brought over from the comics to kind of give them a little bit of authenticity. And he basically said that in regards to he said, players should expect violence, ... The kind that can be so over the top at times, you will just shit your pants. You know the kind.
I did not shit my pants during this game.
No, I played this game on an empty stomach just in case. You know the kind. Bodies in wood chippers, animals attacking, and bodies crushed, cut, shot, and downright exploding everywhere.
Do you think there was someone at the Volition office who said, right, we did a game about, world defamation. We're just going to destroy bodies now.
And we're also going to destroy your trousers while playing this game.
Yeah.
Wow. But to the extent of so when this game finally came to sort of before it went gold and when they were doing QA, this did go through the ESRB quite a few times, and the original plan was that they were going to give it an adults only rating. They apparently worked in tandem with the ESRB in the States to make sure that they could get this through, to the extent that one of the developers said in this on this YouTube interview that basically when other developers went to the ESRB, whenever they gave them the guidelines of here's the best practices for working with us, Volition and the Punisher was their gold standard of here's how these guys worked with us to get their game over the line, and here's how they conducted themselves.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
because that's if you kill someone during the interrogation, in the PAL version anyway, the uncensored PAL version, it goes black and white.
I think it's
actually
I think it's actually just the console version.
So in the console versions, it goes black and white.
It goes into weird black and white, and then the camera kind of pans away, it tastefully looks away slightly, doesn't it? So it's off camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It does change a bit. I do actually no. Because I know it's console because I played the NTSC version emulated because I did run a bit of the PC version. It's at 4K. The UI is unusable. Yeah. So I just said, and I was having a good enough time emulating PS2, so I went back to that. You played the PC version, but I don't believe it pulled away. I think it just had a very, very a big screen effect. It goes
high contrast filter.
Yeah. It's which I actually kind of think it adds more impact doing that. But as a kid, I wouldn't have thought that. As a kid, I was going to
say, I wonder what point in development they also made his rage mode look like that, because it kind of pairs up kind of nicely of just when something really extreme happens to Frank, just, the colors bleed out. And it's a bit of because I always think of this when Kojima was developing MGS5 and he was saying that when you take damage, like colors start to go away, and that's apparently based on a real world thing that when you're when you lose blood, the color receptors in your eyes start to fade.
Wow. So is this like when it's really, really dark and you can only see in black and white, like your rods and cones,
that
right?
kind of
so
thing as well.
The rods don't get enough. Is that like dogs only see in black and white? So is that like the high contrast lets you survive a bit better? You can perceive danger better?
I think, because like obviously dogs are like, they were bred for hunting animals. And I think that's, the thing is that you don't get to see in color, but you get to see better in, darkened conditions, essentially.
Yes.
Much
So
like
dogs
see, so the Punisher sees the way dogs see.
Monochromatic colorblind. They do have color receptors, but they definitely have less color perception.
Blue and yellow
have less
is
color perception than
Who
humans.
can see better, the Punisher or a dog?
Well,
that's the real
question.
I mean,
I feel like
the Punisher can only see evil, so he's
that's
really
true. The Punisher can only
eyesight.
see criminals or innocent people, while dogs, I think,
the dog sees good in everyone.
Yeah, no, exactly. If a dog
the
sees
Punisher is the opposite of a dog.
If a dog sees that you have sausages in your pocket, you're okay.
Yeah.
God. But yeah, so when it came out in the UK, it did get an 18. In Germany, this game was just banned outright, which
not surprised.
Not surprised.
Yeah, because I can't remember what its name is or like even how it pronounced it, but there is that enormous list of like banned like video games in Germany that like even
I wonder if this game made it out in Japan, because Japan is very particular about torture.
But also the game is like full of Yakuza. Well, I guess Sega make the Yakuza games, but also this game is also full of like Japanese criminal stuff. So yeah, I wonder with that. But yeah, I don't know. It's funny because just a lot of like US made PS2 stuff just didn't come out over there. But granted, a lot of Japanese stuff didn't come out over here or over in the States either. It was still that period of time where you could kind of get away for making local games, essentially.
I kind of hope this game didn't come out in Japan now, just because I'm imagining like the Japanese equivalent of one of those YouTubers who imports Japanese games, but he's just in Japan. He's like, right, today I'm going to play this imported copy of The Punisher.
Yeah,
couldn't get over
what's
here.
What's the Japanese term? Do you reckon for you like gaijin gank for like crappy US like FPS games?
I don't know, Amerigay? Because they got Kusage for bad games.
Ooh, yeah, Amerigay's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Nice. The music
Pure
is
speculation.
I think we need the torturing is a weird I was thinking about what's the relevance of this, because obviously it's great and it's fun and it's the USP and like it really kind of puts it front and center. And I realized that every Punisher film, from Dolph all the way through to the Punisher Warzone, who's the
Ray Stevenson,
right? Yeah. All three of them have torture scenes. I've not read every Punisher comic, but basically if you read for long enough, he does eventually tie someone to a chair and, I don't know, attaches some batteries to their testicles or something. It seems to be like this is the one repeating motif that the Punisher has. Like every iteration of the Batman, no matter what, he always has a bat on his chest, or the car, no matter what it looks like, it's always got the jet engine on the back. That's just an iconic part of the character, and everybody agrees it has to remain the same way.
If you
I just had the worst idea for a film ever. You remember during the 2000s, like you had that fucking wave of torture porn movies, like the Eli Roth Hostels and Saw.
So
imagine if there was a torture porn film where at the end it was revealed, it was at the hands of the Punisher.
Oh no, I was
going
to say, or like it's Saw, but it's the opposite. You're doing it from Frank's perspective.
Yeah, 100%. That'd be great. Like he'd be a great slasher villain. He would be a brilliant like Michael Myers character.
And again, it's interesting that like we have now started to see like games like Dead by Daylight that now do start to kind of play around with that. Is that they are multiplayer and some players do play as survivors, but they also do let you play as like a bad guy in those as well. I mean,
there was a very weird multiplayer mode on Condemned 2. Because Condemned 2 had multiplayer, bizarrely enough.
Interesting.
I didn't know that.
But there was a mode where like 2 players were cops and everyone else were homeless people who had barely any health. So it was just a really unfun multiplayer horde mode where 2 people just get to smash the shit out of you for several minutes while you ineffectually charge them.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah,
it was not. It was not fun.
Horrible.
It's no Mordhau. I'll say that. It's.
I mean, what is?
What is?
God. I will say, just to quickly talk about sound stuff, this game has exactly the same issue that I had with Black, which is, this is a game where you play as a scum bum, but the music sounds like Raimi's Spider-Man. Like,
oh my god, the music is so unnecessarily good.
Well, yeah, no, it's very good.
Really
I
love every level where you're fighting the mob and you've got like the Italian, like the operatic chanting going on. It's like, this is awesome. This is, like, but you're in the main menu, and James, the first message you sent me is like, I've got a thing about the music, is like, because it sounds like the Raimi Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, which was the same issue that I had with Black, where it's like you're playing as a scumbum mercenary blown away like Russian guys in old bunkers, and the music literally sounds like Peter's put his suit on for the first time and he's going through New York, and it's like these two things don't quite matter. Like, everyone just had Alan Silvestri brain at the time of like, everything just has to sound like
it's
this.
amazing. All these like swelling strings. The music's by these two fellas who go by the name Sonic Fuel.
Ooh.
I looked them up. They actually have a really storied career. They did loads of film and TV before getting into games. So they did like the music for primetime TV shows like Supernatural, and then they got into games. Yeah, and they did, after this was their first game. This was the first game they made music for. So I think this is why it just goes so hard, because they're just sort of coming in.
They were showing off, yeah.
Yeah, they're showing off. I guess they're just trying to get a stamp on it. But they they're still going. They're still working. But they did, after this, they did Warhawk. They then did the Space Hawk. Is it Space Hawk?
See, that's better fitting for Warhawk, and like their score would probably fit better in those games.
And they did the Simpsons game. Like they did loads of like really good music for games. And this is just, it didn't need to be this, because there's also some really great like trip hop beats and stuff in some of the levels. It's unnecessarily good. It's
just one of those games that you would imagine to have like every song to sound like the Marilyn Manson cover of Sweet Dreams Are Made of
Sweet Dreams.
Like
So on the end credits, did you get the Alien Ant Farm song?
Oh no, I didn't stick out for that.
Man, the end credits.
Out. I didn't know that was Alien Ant Farm, but
I noticed it straight away.
To be fair, that sounds like the kind of
Alien
music. The kind of music that you could just slap metal over this whole game and it would be totally
it's
fitting,
the perfect
but they
era.
instead kind of match the music to the enemy Frank is facing at any given time, which works very well.
But the end credits sequence has a song written by the guys who did the soundtrack, but it's performed by Alien Ant Farm. And it rips as well. It's a really good song, but it's just it's buried forever just in the end credits of a random 2005 computer game that never.
Well, I
did
might
that well.
bury it at the end of the credits of at the end of this episode of Bullets.
Yes,
but,
I'm now wondering how many good songs are kind of trapped that way. Not there's a good song, but Narc had a similar thing where it had like rap kind of trapped in it.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
What
was it? What was it? No, it wasn't Joe Budden. Who was the guy that they got to do the original soundtrack for Narco 5?
Jelly Joe, I think.
Yeah, Jelly Joe. That was it.
What a name! What a rap name!
Republic Commando, the Star Wars game, has.
Oh yeah, it has an original song by Ash.
Yeah, it has Ash.
The game, I've gotten hate for not liking it, and I've kind of turned around on it a bit. But the game Psyops has Cold at the end of it. I can't remember who that's by.
Huh.
Is that Static X?
Could be. Psyops credit.
Cold's quite a common song title, but there is definitely a Static X song called Cold.
Yeah. Sorry. Cold with my mind was the
Cold brackets with my mind.
Is it brackets?
No. Sorry, not with brackets. I'm just an idiot. Cold. I should have said dash. With my mind, Cold.
I am trying to think of like games that did get like music, because Ash Republic Commando is the one that I always think of as well. But I'll leave that open in the comments if people want to say.
Speaking of audio as well, on the subject of audio, this game has an outrageously good voice cast.
Well, let's get into that. So we were talking about the fact that this game was this game was originally pitched as going to be a sequel to the Thomas Jane film. And the original idea was that they were going to get it out in time for the DVD release.
Yes,
that didn't happen. And rather than THQ saying, fuck you, this is now on ice, they basically said, hey guys, do you want another year of development time? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And apparently they used that time completely on polish, which I don't know if
it's true.
Yeah, I
would have said there was a couple of filler levels I think I'd have just cut.
There is I think that's probably just down to the thing of, you have to get a game to 10 hours, otherwise you can't make
I guess. There's literally there is one level which is just another level in reverse and is totally tangential to the plot. Yeah, the peer revisit, which is totally needless.
I quite like that peer level because I
like the first time around. It's just you go through it backwards.
What I thought was really good is Frank's there at the beginning and you're clearing all of the Italian mobsters out of the docks, and then like a couple of days later, the Yakuza have just filled in the power vacuum. Yep. And I'm like, this is quite a clever little bit here where Frank could actually say, wait a minute, I'm sort of facilitating this, aren't I? He doesn't do that, of course, but it gives him an opportunity to perhaps address some of his actions. So I liked it for that reason.
Frank just actively blocking out power vacuum, power vacuum, power vacuum. I mean, the game... okay, we're jumping around the story a bit, but I mean, the game kind of ends with the Kingpin just going like, there's a big opening for me now.
I mean, that was the big sequel tease that they never got to work on, and I guess just to rush to the end of that, they had planned to do a second game, but THQ lost. Basically, they didn't want to re-up the license, so it did get reappropriated into something else, which we'll talk about towards the end of the episode. But so because during that scene, the Kingpin is looking at a bruised and beaten Bullseye. Bullseye, who is voiced in this game by fucking Steve Blum.
Steve Blum he's Matt Murdock as well. The Matt
that's
Murdock
right. He also plays Matt Murdock
in the cutscene. Yeah.
For all of one scene where he turns up.
For all of one scene.
And Frank says, I don't need a lawyer, go away.
Yes.
Cameo over.
I think they double up quite a bit. They get quite a few of the voice actors do 2 or 3 roles. Nolan North is in this game, and he just jobs. He's just like a crackhead or a con in the prison. He's just a bunch of bit roles.
He's the Russian as well, isn't he?
Is he the Russian? If he is
he the Russian?
He is. He voices the Russian.
Right. Okay. Cool. He's okay. So and also a bunch of just random bit parts.
And he also does
paying him by the hour.
Jobbers.
So. Yeah.
It's very, very funny as well with the Russian, because in the film he's played by
Kevin Nash.
He's played by Kevin Nash.
Kevin Nash. Yeah.
Oh,
which just it puts it in the time period perfectly. Because if it wasn't Kevin Nash, it would have been I don't know, Dave Bautista. Before he made the break, this could have been his big break. It's that era of wrestling, isn't it? Like mid 2000s.
Of the Rock managed to break through, and they were like, okay, who's going to be the next WWE guy?
John Cena could have been John Cena.
Oh God, yeah.
Because he's like mid 2000s era as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the whole reason I mentioned that it was a sequel to the film is that Thomas Jane comes back to voice Frank in this, and does an okay job, I think.
He does.
Thomas
I think
Jane
he's great.
apparently loved playing the Punisher and wanted to keep doing it, to the point that there is a 2012 short film that he kind of put together himself.
Yeah, Dirty Laundry.
Dirty Laundry. So
it's great.
There is a tiny little like Thomas Jane Punisher verse.
Yeah,
of the 2004 film, this game, and that.
Yeah. Allegedly, he was on to do Warzone. He was in to do the sequel.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was he wanted to step into a bit more of a production role, and he had he had these kind of ideas of all the things he wanted to do, but ultimately I guess creative differences got the better of him and he had to leave the project. But yeah, for a period of time, Thomas Jane was super invested in being the Punisher, which is brilliant, because I feel like I'd love to talk to him about, has he noticed any of these things about the Punisher being a bad guy, or does he play it straight as well?
I was going to say, Thomas Jane, I feel is kind of a shame, because it's he's a decent enough actor, but now he's sort of fallen into that weird milieu of he only does a lot of right-wing stuff, but I don't think the guy himself is explicit. I mean, I'm sure he votes Republican, but I don't know if he is explicitly a right-wing Nazi, but he does. The last thing I saw him in was Run, Hide, Fight, which was
oh God.
Yeah, that film,
oh my God.
Die Hard, but it was a school shooting, which wasn't. It was that film that it wasn't made by.
It was published by the Daily Wire.
It was distributed by the Daily Wire. Yeah.
Jeez, I didn't even know.
Yeah,
that.
That's how much he's fallen in regards to you can only do stuff like that or
Oh, see, the most recent thing I've seen him in was The Expanse.
I'm gonna make the worst joke of the podcast now, which is, if we see him playing Kyle Rittenhouse in a biopic,
oh my God.
Then we'll know.
Despite him being 40 years older than
they'll age him up a bit. They'll take some creative liberties.
You'll de-age him.
Yeah.
Using CGI. You can do anything now.
They're going to shrink his body like they do with Steve Rogers at the beginning of the Captain America. God. But yeah, no,
On the subject of the voice cast, before I forget, the absolute top of my head blew off when I realised that a random prison guard in this game is played by Dwight Schultz, aka Howling Mad Murdoch from the A-Team, aka Reginald Barclay from Star Trek: The Next Generation. I would say a pretty celebrated actor in his own terms. He just has a bit part in this, just randomly, probably got paid 75 quid for a day's work, just a voice like, "Hey, it's the Punisher," and then that was him done, in and out.
Hey, can you do some scream sounds for if he decides to torture you? A bit of whimpering, and all right, you're done.
You're done.
Yeah,
You're
there you go. Let's validate your parking.
There we go. Here is your voucher for Subway.
Yeah.
It is really funny that it has got this stat cast, but then it is also with this era of. I thought of this when Iron Man turned up, where it's like we're now so much in the era of Marvel where, when Iron Man turns up in Sun, you expect a guy to do an RDJ impression. Iron Man turns up in this, and because it's before Iron Man 1, which was 2008, 2009, it's just guy being like, who turned up? The Punisher? I will look into this. He is doing classic comic book voice, and it's like, these two bits of Lego don't really stick together for me anymore. Which, again, it's funny, you wouldn't have, if you'd made a Punisher game now, and it's funny because we were talking about the old Punisher games. There is a more recent Punisher game, which we can quickly talk about after this, but there'd be no way that you could even get away with, even the new Spider-Man games, you can't put other characters haven't turned up in those, just Spider-Man characters at this point, which, and it just kind of feels a bit of a shame, really, but... Yeah.
It's always fun just to have, Black Widow's in this, but she's Russian. She doesn't have an American accent. She's not, Scarlett Johansson.
She's just got her own weird story going on. This character could have a spin-off Black Widow game where it's just fighting the Russians.
Yeah. Oh, did you? By the way, speaking of, I'll go. Carry on, Snake.
I was just gonna say, it's that. That's what every kind of character cameo feels like. It's just the suggestion of a larger universe, but because it's all just the Frank show, it's they're all just kind of pivoting around. I wonder what the Punisher is up to. Yeah.
They just kind of, I guess their worlds just cross over. Did you get the Half-Life reference in the Stark Tower level?
No.
No.
Did you miss this? So right at the beginning, this is also the only time Spacker Dave is in the game, because Spacker Dave is from the comic and he's in the film, played by Ben Foster. Horrible name, hateful name. Really, I don't even like saying it. Yeah, it makes me cringe just saying it. Garth Ennis has got a lot to answer for that, but it's the only time he turns up. But the conceit of Frank getting into Stark Tower is he's taken Dave on a day trip. He's taken him on the tour. And as you're walking around, you can walk up to the panes of glass, and behind it, there are all these scientists doing experiments. And one of them is like an Iron Man, an arm of the suit, and it's not firing
it's just blasting
lasers.
A wall
it's creating portals. And if you stand by the window for long enough, the characters go, "Oh, Dr. Freeman, please get in here because our new interdimensional portal gun is about to go in for its first test." And it's just like a little 10 second. It's it's the weirdest thing because it's just like, "Hey, gamers, we know what things you like."
There should have been some dope fish graffiti in the first level. Just really, just
then you would have known they had credentials.
What's up, gamers? Yeah, brilliant.
What is up, gamers? There is we have a character in this game called Mario. You shoot him because he's one of the Nucci's. Let's just while we're...
Oh my god, they could have done it all. Oh, there's a worse version of this game filled with game references.
I mean, we only very quickly talked about the bosses just because I mentioned the Russian kidnapping the woman who lives down the hall. Yeah, the fact that the bosses are all just, I'm wearing body armor, you can only shoot my head. On a PS2 fucking controller, not a fan of those. Those
they suck.
Yeah, not great.
Literally every boss is you walk into an arena, a health bar appears, enemies run in continually so you can get more ammo and more health, and then they just run around slowly, you get a few shots off on them, and then you just do it again.
And then they run away.
The first boss fight's okay, where it's like a bloody
just a
quasar arena in the...
Is that the Bushwhacker, the one where you're in that kind of library?
No.
Because there's one in the nightclub.
I'm talking about the one before that where you just fight one of the Nucci boys.
Oh, the guy in his bar. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's the bar where it's just a
sorry,
dude behind a sofa.
I'm thinking of the second boss.
And
Never
the second
mind.
one is but that
second
boss,
one's the attic.
That is like a Quasar arena. That's a great reference.
Because it is, it's like just, this is the most nonsensical, like, this is just wooden barriers in a random arrangement, and you're playing, like, cat and mouse game with him while endless Italians run in.
Yeah. Yeah, that
doesn't happen in Quasar, that last bit, but the layout's the same.
Yeah.
The Jigsaw, the kind of last boss of the game, is probably the most boring because he's armored as well. So you just have to do that annoying, it's like remote bombs thing to knock the armor pieces off of him, and it just takes absolutely forever.
Oh no, so there's a random chance of a hint appearing, which is, I've got to shoot his jetpack. So you don't have to use the bombs. Oh no, you do for the second half.
Because the second kind of phase of that is he's on foot.
Yeah, it's so every boss fight moves so slowly, and there's it's the worst kind of boss fight design where, hey, we've turned off every fun mechanic.
Yeah,
you just have to face this guy by just shooting him in a weak point, and he has 1 million hit points.
You can't have a game without bosses, and we couldn't figure out how to do it, so here they are.
I mean, I am just laughing about the fact, because, like, Jigsaw is a returning guy in the comics, and he's kind of basically like I don't even want to say he's like Two-Face in Batman, because the only thing they have in common is that, they have facial disfigurements. Mm-hmm. Two-Face at least has the gimmick of, like, everything split in two or whatever. Jigsaw's thing is just like, hey, he tried to kill me, but I'm not dead. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess you're good at what you do then, I suppose.
Yeah. There's no way to have a good ideological villain for Punisher, I don't think, because you can only have him have an ideological argument with other heroes.
Which episode of Bullet Time was it where I said my thing of, like, Hideo Kojima figured out the formula for how to have stupid video, like, SNES style video game boss fights, while still also have it be realistic, which is fight a helicopter.
Well, I mean, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 1, Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 have good, like, boss fights in a semi-realistic sense.
Yeah, well, because you fight the Hind D. The Hind D is
it's
like
not just that, like, Vamp is an alright fight.
Oh,
and piece, but
Falcon
you've got,
Raven
like,
as well, and Sniper Wolf. But
Revolver Ocelot's a bit simple, but, you know, it does the trick. And then Olga. And Olga's got, like, a lot of fun gimmicks in her fight.
That's true.
They're just showing off the PS2 tech.
I was just saying more in regards to having, like, a Capcom-style big baddie boss, but also having it be realistic. Like, that again, why wasn't Jigsaw in a heli? That would have made more sense.
Yeah. Or
this was, like, the weird era where... there should be a video on, like, the history of boss fights and just comparing, like, in this era they worked. In this era they didn't know how to make them work anymore, but they still felt like you have to have a boss fight. So they are awful. They are terrible.
How do you make it?
In this era, it's helicopters.
Yeah, it's helis. That's how you do it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? So when I was playing this game, I was like, one thing this game is missing. Think about the era. It was wrestling. Because like the idea of Frank being this sort of free-flowing one-man army, like, it just there are sort of like quick kills, aren't they, where you can get behind someone, you can like slash their throat, or you can like break their neck. And I was like, they should have just worked into this more. They should have figured out how to get more MMA wrestling type stuff in this. Because actually, like, I feel like the era of this, you know, like we were saying about wrestling, like Kevin Nash playing the Russian, like it feels like it already fit. Wrestling games were already around. We had games like Def Jam, Fight for New York, and like, I just think the bosses actually would have been great. Just flip the script and just have them be a wrestling match. Like, no guns. It's just a ding ding, and just the camera angle pans up, and it's just Frank and the Russian having a brawl, and it's just basically like
nothing would be
WWF
lost
brawl on the N64 or something.
You go to prison, so you shouldn't have any guns.
Nothing would be lost
anyways.
as well, because they've already turned off all of the good mechanics in the game. So you may as well just make it a different game for them. Just have that.
There was a period, right? Like a few games did this where the bosses would just be a completely different genre to the rest of the game. Quite often they'd be like, suddenly it'd be a side-scrolling beat-em-up, or like it'd be like a fighting game, like a one-on-one Street Fighter or Tekken knockoff.
There's a terrible game. I don't know, it's terrible, but we might do it one day. I've shown it to James, and he has been baffled by it, which is America's 10 Most Wanted.
Oh,
baffled in a good way, though.
Where, like, your character is hunting Osama bin Laden, and when you track him down, it turns into fucking Tekken. But it's a first-person shooter.
No, Tekken's given a bit too much credit. It turns into Street Fighter 1.
It turns into Fighter Maker for the PS2.
Yeah, it does.
That's exactly what we should have had. Like, and like, I don't know what year Dead Rising came out, but like, I feel like
2006.
Yeah.
So there you go. Look, it was a year away.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that could have been it. Like, just replace the zombies with, I don't know, Italian mobsters. That's the game.
I get what you mean, what you were saying earlier about, like, Arkham Asylum is, like, the perfected version of this, because that is a game that let you do... Like, you didn't have shooting, you had batarangs, which was kind of like third-person shooting.
Actually, I'm thinking on it more like... Here's how it could work as well, because Batman just melts to guns in that game, and Frank could be the same way, and that's how you encourage that mix of stealth, is like, yeah, Frank can use guns, but he goes loud, and then everyone's going to pile on him, so he has to move, he has to reposition and stay aggressive and scare people. Yeah. Because you can't just get in a straight-up gunfight in that, even with your, like, stun gun. They will kill you. Yes. You have to play a little smarter and a little more fast and aggressive and clever.
Gosh.
He can take a few, because every film's got, because Frank wears the bulletproof vest, so you can't give him a bulletproof vest unless you can show it working, right? Because every film he gets shot fully in the chest and lives, and you go, yeah, he's still going, great. So sure, he can take one or two, makes sense. But back to James's first question, I really do think that the Arkham games are the kind of, this is where that should have ended up. I'd love that. I would love that game.
Yeah. No, Arkham with the Punisher in it, where you can use like sort. It's funny because
with some German suplexes.
Yeah, because that game.
In this game, if you suplex someone, their head would explode. Like,
there is quite a lot of head exploding.
As it should.
There is quite a lot of head exploding, isn't there? And like limbs blowing off. It's got
the
that.
Heads pop. I was quite surprised by like arms exploding if you like hit them with a shotgun. I was like, oh wow,
real Soldier of Fortune vibes.
Yeah, no, we covered Soldier of Fortune on the podcast, and that was exactly what it reminded me of. And again, it felt like of that era of, like, I always think that people have this kind of conception of Mortal Kombat and Night Trap came out, and then they invented the ESRB, and nobody made games like that anymore. And it was like, no, it was like 2 years after the ESRB that Soldier of Fortune came out, a game that was literally advertised on its Gore. Like, they had rebuilt the Quake engine to add like a Gore system to it. The name of their system was called Ghoul in capital letters.
Oh my god.
And like, this game feels like it's in that similar vein of like, games that are going to make your parents vomit if they look, like naughty boy game kind of thing, which...
Oh, do you remember the EA marketing push on like Dead Space 1 or 2 where they got mums to play
Dead Space 2, you're making mothers... Well, I mean, and they did the same thing with Dante's Inferno where they had a fake like band of Christians outside E3 protesting it.
Oh my god.
That's interesting. Fake that kind of lame, getting a fake band of Christians for that.
Yeah, no, I mean,
the game marketing is filled with, like, get Shadow Man on your grave, the bloody Dead Island Riptide torso.
Name your kid Turek Evolution and you'll get a free copy of Turek Evolution.
Oh, I really like it for the next fucking Quake. Name your child Quake.
No, call your child Quake 5 and you'll get a copy of Quake 5.
Can the 5 be a middle name?
No. 5 has to be the surname.
Rules.
Yeah, Quake V. Yeah, here's my child, Quake V. God.
Hyphenated?
I'm trying to think if there's anything that we haven't covered with... I think we've picked apart the Punisher. It's one of those games that it's...
I do have one thing, actually.
Yeah, sure.
I do have one thing, which it's kind of like... It does feel like a thingy note, but I was really impressed with it. I really like the AI in this game.
Yeah, it's pretty smart.
I like how, like... I mean, they're not... I mean, they are smart, but they're smart in that way where they're believably stupid.
Yeah.
But it's like... Talking about, the Arkham games and that, stealth is somewhat a feature in this because you can creep around enemies, you can like misdirect them. If the enemy doesn't spot you and you move cover, you can like walk around and watch enemies like approaching where they last thought you were, which I always like that. It's one of those things where maybe I grew up in playing too many games where the AI was just like fucking locked in on you. But I always appreciate a game where you can bamboozle, and especially with the scoring system and getting hostages, it's that nice level of AI where they're just predictable enough that it's like, okay, I know how to play you. I can use my third-person powers to my advantage and get away with some cheeky shenanigans and grab a new hostage.
It is really good to the third person. You can get the camera around the corners and stuff to kind of plan your routes. And although there are no shoehorn stealth segments, and that would have been really fitting for the time, and it kind of would make sense if they'd put one in here. But like Snake said, there is kind of stealth mechanics. You can actually get sometimes you can get like 2 or 3 quick kills in a row without anyone seeing you, and you can like clear an area really quickly, and you're like, holy shit, I feel super powerful right now. Like, just got that balance right, I think.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's that kind of AI I enjoy fighting, where, you know, they're just smart enough to be stupid.
Yeah,
just that right level.
No, they're playful. It's playful intelligence rather than them being like, you know, they can see you through walls and stuff like that. It's like, no, I can't remember what game it is, but it's like they have AI that like certain enemies will just stand next to explosive barrels just because it's more fun, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
that's what you want, right? Because what's the point in having them?
Kind of a question that sort of popped into my head, and this might be a nice way to sort of wrap up talking about the game itself, which is like, because I did really enjoy my time with this, but I couldn't stop thinking about the fact of like, this is good, but it's not really higher than like a 7 out of 10 for me. And it is like one of those things of like, what is it that pushes the game over the edge of like, and I know that numbers are arbitrary and stuff like that, but I guess talking in the parlance of like, you know, recommending games to somebody where you would say a game is a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, but what a
just
7.
something in this. Yeah, there's just something small in this game that stops me from saying like, oh, this is like a perfect execute. Well, I think it's a solid enough execution of its idea, but maybe it's the idea itself or the Punisher. You can't really push it anymore of like, this is like an exceptionally like it's a really competent game, but like there's nothing particularly exceptional about
There's a little bit of clunk to all of the gameplay.
Yeah.
I know it's one of those things where everything is fun and everything kind of works, but it's a ton of little things for me where, because I get what you mean, like, I don't believe in number ratings, but you can kind of get what someone means when they say, like, oh, this game is a perennial 7 out of 10, where, like, it's kind of, you know, you're not going to get a world beater, but you're going to get a perfectly fun experience. It kind of either lacks this extra dimension or this super unique mechanic that just works really well. Frank's kind of clunky, the aiming is kind of clunky, the scoring system is kind of, it's, like, fun to rack up score, but it feels a little bit counterintuitive. You know, all the interrogation mechanic is, you got 4 basic ones, but there's one optimum, like, best option, which is the easiest to do. I think it's one of those little things where it's like, this game had a year of polish, but it just needed like a little bit more juice. It just needed a little bit more speed and like a sense of flow and kind of tightening everything up that little bit more.
I even think of what you said about the fact
weird ineffable quality.
Yeah, it's like you said about the fact that you return to that level, and partially what I was thinking of in this game is that, I kind of get the loop at this. Like, I'm not really doing anything different between levels, and the Jackie Chan stuff of like, you know, Rambi the Rhino blowing apart a guy, and then like the piranhas helping you out, like that is cute. But then like, it is just kind of just sort of that clunky third person shooting all the way through. But then you could say exactly the same thing about like an Uncharted 2 or an Uncharted, you know, or like a Gears of War, whatever, or Resident Evil 4. But those are games that you would say like,
small. There are a
exceptional.
couple more small niggles, I'd say, which are like, you know, so you can, talking about the Jackie Chan stuff like you just mentioned, you can pick up random objects like crowbars and things like that, and I wish there were a few more of those, but it goes back to the scoring system, which I'll just say you don't have to play for score.
No.
Like, it does, but if you do, I think you might have a worse time unless you kind of know what you're getting into, unless you want to have this very methodical play style. But you think, oh, cool, I can pick up a crowbar. I wonder what unique animations this has. But then it's like, oh, I've put my gun away and I can't take hostages, so my score is in serious jeopardy. So, I'm just going to ignore these. And it's like, but I want to see my unique animations. And on that note, one thing I forgot to mention with the, you know, bespoke interrogations. So Frank has someone at like an angle grinder, or he's holding them over a ledge, or, you know, he's holding them up to a rhino. You want to see the animation. you get a score deduction because it treats it as a failed interrogation, even if you do it after you've got it successfully extracted information. So it's one of those things which feels like, that's not very frank. Why am I losing score for punishing the bad guy?
You're getting punished for it, yeah.
And then there are other bits where you just have bespoke execution areas. It's not even an interrogation, it's just a cool way to kill someone. And you get points for that.
Hey, that bullhorn on the wall, just throw the guy onto it. That's that snake in the jungle, throw a guy into it.
Oh, the snake's amazing. Yeah.
God, I forgot.
There's There's like a what's the word? An Incan like ritual sacrifice altar.
Yeah, the museum one.
You like slash a dude open and he bleeds and it goes down the little channel. Like, wow, I was like, you're sacrificing him at the altar of justice or something. It was brilliant, man. I think it all just hangs together just enough, right? That's it. Like, it doesn't really excel in any one area.
This game that's the thing. This game isn't like, you couldn't call it a disaster. This game is solid. But the thing is that like, what is the difference between a game that is solid and exceptional, I guess? Which is...
It's one of those things where, this should feel exceptional, but I think it is just a parade of little things in its control. I mean, the bosses in particular, like, God.
Sure.
You get to a boss fight and it's like, okay, fun has left the building for the next 10 minutes.
It's the ephemera of trying to talk about games is that, like, it is so much in, like, it's not even when you see it, it's it when you feel it in regards to whether something clicks or not, which you can't, like, we could talk about the gun feel in this till the cows come home and not really quite convey of, like, how the game actually plays, But,
well, we can only get across our own experiences and, like, takeaways, like, how does this affected my overall view of video games?
Sure. I would say
what have I taken away that I would like, I'd like to see more of that generally, or I'd like to see less of that, or I wish it did that. And just based on every little experience I've had.
I think going to the numbered system, it's like, I think if you came at this game like having played, because this came out 2005, so right at the beginning of the year was Resident Evil 4. And then it was like a string of bangers, like, you had Tomb Raider Legend, and you had like Hitman Blood Money and stuff like that. Just all of these GTA San Andreas, just all of these exceptional third-person shooters that are either exceptional because of their third-person shooting or some other aspect to it. And then you're playing this and comparing against those, and you're going, this was fine, this was solid. And again, at the time as well, high score systems were starting to become a little bit antiquated because people wanted, quote, cinematic games and whatever. This is us playing this now, like, after years of games coming out and just kind of appreciating it more on its own merits. This game is like a 10 out of 10 for, like, again, like, it is a naughty boy
the 10
game.
out of 10 of 7 out of 10.
Well, I would say this game is the perfect 10 out of 10 for, like, a naughty boy. Like, you only own 3 games, which is WWE SmackDown, Tony Hawk's Underground, and this. Like, these are... I've skipped school. My mom doesn't know I have this game, and I'm like playing this like without people knowing, and I'm having like an awesome time doing so. This is on like a Manhunt where it's like, it's the joke from The Simpsons where they go and see the film Naked Lunch because they think it's going to be a porno, and then they come out of it and they're like, what the hell was that? Like, Manhunt would be the same thing of, yo, dude, this game's so gory, you need to check it out, and then you just come out of it feeling ill. This is The Punisher where you would come out of it feeling like, it was grim, but I had a fantastic time with it.
I had a good time.
I got more or less exactly what I expected out of that.
And I think that's it. It's why it's unfair sometimes to take this and compare it against one of the bangers of the same year. Because I don't know, like, you go back to other, maybe make a cinematic parallel, something like Land of the Dead, which is a film that came out in the mid 2000s. Might have been 2005 actually. But maybe
it was, and that had a game adaptation. Funnily enough.
Maybe it would never make anybody's top 10 films of all time list, but if you put it on, you're having a good time. Like, it's a vibe all the way through. And I think that's the same with this. Like, every single level takes like 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. Like, you're not spending any significant amount of time here. The whole game is like maybe 9-10 hours start to end. So you're not investing a lot. Whereas maybe like at one of the big top end bangers, like, you might be investing 15, 20, 40 hours in a narrative. Whereas it's going for something completely different. You're in, you're having a great time, you're coming out. So I think
if you like it more than that, like, the game has a lot of replayability with its scoring systems.
Hell yeah.
Like, there's another animation I can see if I like, oh damn it, I accidentally killed that guy. I'll have to interrogate him next time I play the level and get the unique thing.
And it has the classic thing of I'm going to invite my friends over because the game's full of cheats. You just go, hey, go to this level and I'm going to
Get the big head cheat.
ammo. It has big head mode.
Yeah.
Fucking blow people's heads up kind of thing. Yeah, like, I mean, probably the thing that might have given this game a tiny bit more longevity would be like online multiplayer or something. But even then,
we talked about the credits ages ago and the music. Do you know what else the credits has? A fucking outtake reel, which you just
with
don't
all the
see
cheats
very
on
often.
and stuff. Yeah,
all the cheats and glitches going off, and it's like, oh, that's cute. Like they just throw in like a little gag reel at the end.
A game made by people, like
Yeah.
This is the fun of development of like putting this game together.
One of my favorite things on the old Bungie website back in the day was they had like the Halo 1 and 2 outtakes, and you could browse those. And I was like, I loved games having outtakes because again, the Jackie Chan thing, Jackie Chan had outtakes.
Yeah.
Outtakes are the best thing in the world.
Yeah, like Pixar movies used to have like,
like
it was
the
always
fake
kind of
outtakes.
stupid because they had to make them from scratch. But,
Yeah.
They wanted to add this kind of element to them of like, hey, these are kind of, made by people, starring people sort of thing, But, God. Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the bullet time thing of just like, a lot of these games that we have played have like just been incredibly charming for one reason or another, but you then like, hey, why did these games miss their mark? It is literally just the circumstance of when they came out.
Yeah, I mean that is the cruelty of it. Is you say this game got an extra year of polish, and it probably did need it, and probably did do it a lot of favors. But yeah, the moment you said Resident Evil 4 came out at the start of the year, I was like, oh yeah, because Resident Evil 4 just absolutely changes everyone's perceptions of, oh, okay, so games can do all this crazy stuff now. And then what before was just like perfectly acceptable fun is like, why aren't you pushing stuff like Resident Evil 4? And it's a totally unfair kind of set of expectations.
Yes. It raises the bar so fucking high that it's like, unless you're Hitman, which can be a stealth game, or like, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, how the hell do you compete with that,
Yeah, Splinter Cell.
No, exactly. Yeah, the Ubisoft Splinter Cell games, the Battlefront games, which they had the Star Wars license. So,
Battlefront 2 and Republic Commando, both 2005 as well.
Exactly.
Hell of a year. Future Perfect.
Oh yeah, I mean, funny enough, we talked about Future Perfect, and that was like a game that didn't do very well on release because it didn't get any fucking EA took because they. Basically, the reason that EA published when they fronted the development for Future Perfect is because they saw the scores of Time Splitters 2, and so they're like, "Oh, so this is a guaranteed hit, then, huh?" So they like kept checking in, and then they basically took the marketing budget away from them, Free Radical, thinking it would be a solid thing, and pumped it into fucking GoldenEye Rogue Agent.
Oh yeah.
A game that only exists because a Free Radical design had made fucking GoldenEye while at Rare. It's like, it is like Shakespearean tragedy,
Yeah, it's terrible. It's horrid. The story of Free Radical was so tragic. It makes me so sad.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that it happened twice.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
God, yeah, we never talked about the Time Splitters 4 stuff, did we? Because at the time we had no idea, but
we made
3 as well.
We made that podcast series maybe a little bit too early, but how were we to know?
Yeah. And we made the joke of it was the thing that Doke used to say of like Fortnite ripped us off. And then I guess they thought, maybe while we're playing off the rip-off game, let's see how we get on with that. God. The only other things I got to say, so this game did pretty well on release, is all I will say, in regards to they were able to make their budget back, plus a little bit extra on the side. Decent little hit for THQ, to the extent that they did plan a sequel to this game. And funnily enough, there is a bunch of stuff online about it. Found a YouTube channel called Always Nerdy, and they released they had found a bunch of concept art that was done by one of the artists at Volition for what could have been in Punisher 2. So as the game kind of teased us at the end, Kingpin would have been a big part of it. Bullseye would have came back as well, slightly redesigned, almost like it was kind of rebuilt a little bit as almost a bit of a cyborg.
Oh, brilliant.
Daredevil would have turned up. finally, because obviously Matt Murdock's in the game, but not. And a couple of mooks do refer to Daredevil, but you never actually see him.
They're going on like, oh, he took out 100 guys. That's in this. Yeah, that's in the penultimate level where you go through the Yakuza building.
Black Widow was going to come back, Nick Fury was going to come back. Elektra may have turned up as well, apparently.
Interesting.
Based on some of the concept art. So we might have got a bit more of a mix of like almost a bit of like a kind of a Frank Miller kind of thing going on if, they were throwing Daredevil.
Would it have had microchip?
See, that was the one thing I'm surprised that this game didn't have
Where was micro?
You keep going, you keep going back to...
Microchip could have fit so well into the sequel's format.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been like, again, to go back to Arkham Asylum, it's like having Oracle.
It's Oracle.
In your ear,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Perfect.
He could have been like, hey, watch out, Frank, there's some guys around back there. But also he could have been your upgrade guy. Like, you go to Microchip's van and he's like,
yeah, and you
hey, I got all
spend
this
game
stuff.
points.
Yeah.
You spend your in-game
You spend
currency.
your style points where he just goes, damn, Frank, that was cool. Have this new stuff.
Hey, Frank, I saw you on the cameras, and yeah, that was pretty sick. I have this new gun, kind of thing.
I like the idea of him doing fucking radio call-outs on your combo meter.
Yeah, I liked how you pushed...
He's just howling into the mic as you're getting, like, Balatro-sized combos going on.
I like how you pushed that guy into that bandsaw, Frank. That was great. Here's a bigger gun. Let's do that more.
I'm airdropping it on your location.
I'm actually gonna drive. Hey Frank, I'm gonna drive around the back. I've been saving this rocket launcher for when you do something really cool. Happy birthday, Frank. Another thing that they had planned to do with the sequel, which was something that they had considered doing with the first game, which I only quite realized when they show you in the kind of like, it's not really a hub, it's just kind of a menu where you choose your missions. Like, everything is geographically placed within New York City, which I know is kind of stupid to say of just like, well, yeah, because he's based in New York. But the original plan was that it was going to be a connected open world.
Well, I knew you were going to say it because it was just like you were saying earlier. Everything's open world, right? Everything has to go open world eventually.
Yeah. And apparently there had been talk right at the beginning of development to make it an open world game until a guy said, like, the fun of the Punisher is him being these little action set pieces. We don't want to have like players drive back and forth between them, and like, he's not going to go around helping people like my balloon, like, is he just going to shoot it out of the air kind of thing?
Yeah.
So no,
I'm sorry to actually bring it up again now, but we're talking about the closest game to it, and I just remembered Mafia 3. Mafia 3 is probably the closest you get to a Punisher game in recent times.
Oh, just in regards to a bit of a morally conflicted soldier.
Well, especially when the idea of a free roam Punisher, but no, like the entire conceit of Mafia 3, which it's a bit of a tragedy because essentially people complain Mafia 2 is like, hey, you made this big open world, why is there nothing to do in it? Mafia 3 goes totally like, all right, the conceit of the game is you are a black Vietnam vet, you've come back, you've met with your family, and they're part of the black mob. The Italians double-cross you, and they're taking over New Orleans. And then, because you are former Green Beret, you team up with your former, like, CIA handler, and it's like, okay, we are going to take this criminal operation apart bit by bit. And that is the free roam conceit, is you've got the open city, there are criminals everywhere, go disrupt it. And it's very kind of piecemeal, but that is essentially what the Punisher does in like a lot in taking down the Mafia is, sees all the connections, takes out bits of the operation.
Yeah, it's very Crackdown, which isn't quite the tone of Punisher, but it is also a similar thing of like being a superhero game where you play with guns.
Being a mega cop.
Yeah, exactly. Being the biggest cop of all with absolutely zero like accountability. It's
no
great.
oversight, no accountability.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Zero oversight, zero accountability. God. But yeah.
Anyway, go grab those agility orbs and get faster.
Yeah, exactly. They should have given Frank agility orbs. That would have been good.
I want to play a Punisher game where you can jump 40 feet in the air and then kick a car off of an overpass.
The one thing that this game was missing was the old Neversoft Spider-Man thing of you could address Frank up in the different like costumes.
It has it. It does have it. It has it.
It does.
It has it.
Does?
Yeah.
I don't
know if the console version has this, but the PC version, it definitely has unlockable costumes.
Maybe I didn't get that far.
This at all.
Yeah,
So what funny costumes do you get?
Well, the only three that I got was typed in codes, so this might just be like maybe like pre-order codes.
Maybe it's a cheat thing then. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not in the cheap menu. But like you can, I think it might have been pre-order. But anyway, but there's an 80s suit which is like the white gloves, white boots.
Oh hell yeah!
Big belt, and then there's a 90s one which is just a little more kind of drab, and then there's the more modern Punisher Max 2000s suit.
Huh.
So
what if just him in the t-shirt and grey jean?
You got it, yeah. And then there are like some bespoke individual levels. There's like different suits he wears. Well, like when he goes to the tropical island, he's got
he's dressed in camouflage.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was genuinely wondering when you get to the Nucci Manor, I was like, why did he take his coat off? The coat was cool.
It was too warm.
Yeah.
they had the heating on in the mansion.
Nucci just runs the heating bill through the fucking roof.
So, that's systemic design. They were like, hey, Frank's coat has got armor plating in it, so if he made the mansion so hot he takes it off, that'll make it easier to hit. Okay, no, I didn't get costumes then, but I mean, hey, if they remake this game, they could have added they could have added Frankencastle.
Oh, definitely Frankencastle. Yeah, Cosmic Ghost Rider, that could be in there. Yeah.
They could have added, when he was like the Renegade Angel Frank as well. Yes, I don't think they probably would have added the one where he was given the experimental serum that changed his race, though. I think that would have been a bit too much for him. where he joined forces with Luke Cage, who all the way along was like, I don't like this, Frank. This isn't. I don't like what you're doing here. But
he doesn't like adopt. He doesn't talk.
No, he isn't, and he looks like that's the thing. He still looks like Frank as well. Like it's so stupid. Comic books, say. That was the funny thing is that this series was based on Garth Ennis's Welcome Back, Frank. And that series was literally called that because it was him saying, all this dumb fucking angel shit, we're getting rid of that. We're taking it back to basics.
Yep.
God. So they were thinking for the second one, make it a bit more open world, a bit more ambitious, but then THQ were like, nah, good job with this, but we're not re-upping the license. Why didn't you take that technology and put it towards something else? Which is where Bling Bling came back in.
There we go. It all comes back around.
So they combine the two ideas together, which is why in Saints Row 1, you can literally just pick people up and throw them like you can in The Punisher.
Actually, that's in 2. In 1,
in 2, yeah.
Actually, I can't remember if 1 has hostage-taking mechanics. I don't think it does, but that does come back. And yeah, they do feel very similar. Like, you can see the evolutionary, like, this is remnants of a Punisher open-world game, even though we are just a criminal. Actually, granted, Frank is a criminal.
Frank's a criminal, yeah.
We got blurred lines here.
Yeah, he went to court and everything. I forgot to say that when we were talking about stupid Punisher stuff of just like, I like all the stupid origin stories they've ever had for why he has the skull logo. Thomas Jane one, hey Dad, look at this cool t-shirt. Thanks.
Yep.
Ray Stevenson one, don't give him an origin. Smart move. John Burenthal. Oh, so we've taken an x-ray of your head and it looks like a big spooky skull. That shit's sick. I'm going to spray paint that on my body now, man.
What the fuck did you expect to find in there? Exactly.
John Bernthal, I'm sorry to tell you, we've x-rayed your head and there is a terrifying spooky skull inside of it. I'm really sorry to tell you.
The doctor just looking at it going like, Jesus, I've never seen a skull this fucking spooky.
Are you telling me there's a fucking skeleton inside of me? I'm going to get the fucker out.
But like
give me this gun, I'm getting this skeleton out of here.
So his skull has like the evil eyes and like the big long teeth of the Punisher logo. Like the eye holes are like triangular.
Imagine being so angry that even your skull
fucking
is
bones.
bending to a permafrown.
And my 17-year-old daughter, who's doing art studies, she moved the X-ray while we were scanning, which is why your teeth are all bent, like all smeared at the bottom.
Like the doctor looking at Frank's X-ray, going, "Well, Mr. Castle, I've got some bad news. You are some previously undiscovered branch of humanity. You fucking shot off from the Neanderthals somewhere."
Your teeth go down your neck, like they're so long. They're like 3 feet long. These things.
Yeah.
They go all the way down to your belt.
Them, you would have tusks.
Frank, these teeth are sticking into your brain and making you more aggressive.
Good. Stick them in further.
Good.
No, I was just going to say I didn't realize there were so many different origins for the skull logo. I didn't know that.
And the funny thing is,
how
is
many
that
do you need to come up? Like that'd be so funny. It's like okay, how the fuck do I contrive this very serious man wearing?
It looks
a
rad.
skull?
it's my favorite thing of like Spider-Man's like, well, I mean, if I want people to know what my powers are, I just need to put a little cartoon spider on my chest just so you go, oh, okay, Spider-Man. Batman's thing is like, oh, I'm going to dress up like a creature of the night. But if people don't get that, I'm going to put a very stylized bat symbol on my chest. But not, like the more they redesign the bat symbol, it's just kind of like, what is that, like a car or something? Like, what the fuck? What the hell am I looking? Is that a glider? What the fuck is this kind of thing? But see, Superman had it right. It's just like, oh, big S.
It just means hope. It just means hope.
Yeah, sorry. Am I fine? It means hope.
Iron Man, extremely fucking lazy.
Well, Iron Man's great because he was just like,
that's just my prosthesis.
Yeah, he's
I've
just
made
like, that's my energy source. I don't need a symbol. Like, my symbol is my fucking body.
If I was Iron Man, I'd put that thing behind armor. But that's just me. I'm just crazy like that.
He likes to live life on the edge. He's a bit of a daredevil, which, speaking of daredevil, big Catholic guilt, that's what I'm about.
Which is why he, rather than putting a big crucifix on his chest, he puts a double D on there. So you know that he's Donnie Darko. I really like that one of the, like, before they gave him the all red suit in the comics, it was like bright yellow. And
yellow,
I was just thinking in my head, and it was like, yeah, I guess a guy who might not be able to see would make
he's blind. It makes sense to him.
Just made out of like really thick textures. He's like, okay, well that's what my arms are. And there you go.
There's a conflicting law. Well, there's not conflicting law, but there's different law about how Frank's family were killed as well. So depending.
So in the Dolph Lundgren film, it's really interesting because it's like, because 80s films was like, they were still shot on like celluloid and looked really bright.
Yeah.
The way that his family dies, like, it looks like he's in Leave It to Beaver. Like, he's on a 1950s like cul-de-sac. It's colored like like the beginning of Beetlejuice. And it's just his wife and child just get blown up in a car. It's like,
wow. And in Warzone, it's that they had seen they'd witnessed a gangland killing.
Yes.
And then they went on a picnic and the gangsters turned up and blew them all away to silence any potential witnesses of the gangland killing.
I want to say that the original comic one was that they went for a picnic in Central Park.
Right. And they just killed, like, because in the Thomas Jane film, obviously they're all killed because Frank was an undercover FBI agent and he did like a big deal. Some gangster's kid ended up getting killed. And then the gangster's like, I want you to kill his whole family. But so like it's ever so slightly different. And what I love about the game is there is like a half, in the manual, there's a half-page description of his backstory because that's all it takes to give him a backstory. And it says that his family were they were killed in like a gun battle. They said they were killed in like a gangland gunfight, but it puts in brackets as innocent bystanders killed. Like it feels to me like like his 7-year-old daughter wasn't just there blasting away with a Mac 10.
She wasn't in the opposite gang kind of thing.
I mean, I also just find it just incredibly funny as like a whole family wiped out as innocent bystanders. Just like, that is terrible aim. You really botch this one, lads.
It's funny because they do a little evolution because in the spin-off like Frank Kills the Marvel Universe, is they recreate that scene, but it's the X-Men are having a fight in the park and they are just like innocent bystanders that get caught. They get like lasered or something like that. And fucking Cyclops just goes to Frank and he's like, I'm so sorry, and Frank just fucking plugs him.
I guess if there was anyone that Marvel people would like to see just get plugged immediately, it would be Cyclops.
He's the worst.
As I've heard from many people recently, because there's a new X-Men series out apparently. Cyclops.
It's very good, and he's great in it.
Good.
Yeah, he's great in it.
You need to sit down and give it a proper watch.
It's very good.
Speaking of proper watches, do we want to, lads, do you want to try and take a guess at what this game is sitting at on Metacritic?
65.
Okay.
I think it's going to be lower. I'm going to go 59.
Snake, you are closest. It is 69 on Xbox
Whoa,
and 68
nice.
on PS2. Yeah, no, it got the sex number on Xbox.
It got the sex number.
It's funny though, because a lot of the reviews are like I said, what is the difference between a 7 out of 10 and a 10 out of this is very much like a 7 out of 10 from all of the big reviewing houses. And I mean, the highest I could see from the proper critic reviews came from GameSpot, which was a 66. And they said, the game tries to break out of the third-person shooter blueprint by offering sometimes gory interrogation sequences, but these portions don't do enough to change what is otherwise a very by-the-numbers action game, which I don't massively disagree with what they said there.
No,
Fine,
the thing is,
fine.
I like this game, but I can't even argue. I think that is another problem, just going back, that I'm not one of those, games journos guys, but I think, if you're trying to attach a whole cultural context to it in the year RE4 come out, you have to do this annoying thing of like, well, it's not really advancing the genre, so I gotta think that it's... But then we come back years later and we all had fun with it, just going, no, this is just a perfectly fun shooter.
Yeah.
We're not trying to put it in this big... Well, we are trying to put it in a big context, but we're still enjoying it.
Yeah, just the wider context is talking about like the secret history of FPS games that people don't really talk about, and why is that the case, I suppose. And it's funny because I feel like it's something that we've come back around now to, because just the independent scene in regards to FPS games, because like we mentioned Max Payne a couple of times, and El Paso Elsewhere is like a new Max Payne game. And
I played it last year. It's a very fun game. I actually have a video in the can that I just need to finish editing about it.
That's fair enough. But like, it feels like, if somebody had made, somebody did make like a fucking Punisher throwback, which was Hatred, and Hatred got absolutely fucking shat on.
Well,
not that I'm going to defend it, because
it was more of a postal throwback, but that was a very interesting little. They really wanted controversy, and they couldn't. It's funny because that developer is still around, and they tried to get that same controversy again, Destructive Creations, on their next game. Do either of you know what they made after Hatred?
Wasn't it like about wasn't it like an RTS game where you like fought Hamas or something like that?
Oh, no, it was a turret game where you just gun down wave after wave of ISIS as they storm beaches.
That was yeah.
It's like, okay, this is just transparently fucking edgy topical.
Yeah, no, like Hatred was like, I think people kind of smelt immediately like, oh, this is just Edward Schlock kind of thing. And it's funny because a lot of the reviews didn't even like bother engaging with that. It's just like, we're gonna review it as a game, and as a game, it's not very good. Like Yahtzee though, it's his kind of takeaway of just like, this is Edgelord Schlock, but like as a shooter, it's it's a 4 or 5 out of 10.
Yeah, it's like it's trying to. It's like, get people outraged, then get the people who are annoyed by the outrage to support you. But it's like, you still need a good game after that if you really want to even lock that kind of moron in. And
I was going to say, the Punisher at least does kind of have that, but it was also released at a time that, it probably wasn't even the most controversial game of that year, because again, God of War 1.
But I think people were. I think 2005. Everyone's just mad about hot coffee at this moment.
Oh yeah. Well, you say people, I mean just like Fox News and
morons. Fox News are mad at it. Like, Punisher, he's going out here stabbing people. He's, and that's fine. That's a lovely time.
Yeah, exactly. He's okay, but having sex, no, thank you. No sex, thank you.
That's cringe, bro. That's cringe.
No, thank you. You were saying, Matty, that your favorite magazine games, TM, they give it a 60. The Punisher does exactly what it sets out to do. Picking up the controller gives immediate access to a theater of death and destruction. And while originality is gunned down at some point during the first few levels, there's plenty of fun to be had, especially for fans of the comic.
You know what? That's a very good 6 out of 10 review. That is a 6 out of 10 review that gets. There's still fun to be had here, because it's not a 4. Or
and I think I think that's one of the fundamental things about the numbers system is you go, it is a 6 out of 10. But it's a really big 6.
Yeah, it is. It is a solid 6.
Yeah, there are different kinds of 6s, and I think that's the whole thing of. I went to go. This is completely off the rails, but I went to go and see Kong Skull Island at the cinema, and I came out of it. A friend of mine said, "How did you enjoy Kong Skull Island?" And I said, "It is a 6 out of 10, but it's got to be the biggest fucking 6 I've ever seen in the cinema. Like,
Well,
it's
the thing as well is 6 is the right
fantastic.
side of 5.
yeah,
No, exactly. Six is a positive score.
It's almost like there is not to be objective, but like I can recognize there are better films than this, but this film has moved me and entertained me far more than maybe films that could be considered artier or better. And I kind of feel like Punisher might be one of those. Like, it is a 6, but what a 6!
I went and I saw like Shakespeare a couple months ago, and I hadn't liked it my whole life, and I enjoyed it, but I still like the movie Shoot 'Em Up. Which
I thought you were going to say
you can have both.
I saw Shakespeare, and I thought, Shakespeare is 6 out of 10.
6
You know,
out of
it's my
10.
score for-
6 out of 10.
Here's my hey, the Bard, good job, man. You got
he did
just
right.
above
He done
average.
well.
You know what? That Shakespeare, I'm not, considering I've just only decided, no, I like him now. He's bound to have a 6 out of 10 in his repertoire. He wrote a lot. There's got to be
true.
a dud in there.
Tempest.
you know?
Maybe Shoot 'Em Up. That's a good film, man. Paul Giamatti.
It's a good film.
Oh yeah, I
Clive
was
Owen.
shooting him up the other
Yeah.
day, and they do a lot of stupid gun shit in that film. It's pretty cool. Also a lot
There's
of
a lot
baby
of
stuff in that.
And
film.
sexy stuff as well.
That's true. Yeah, there's
Whoa. I
think that
Monica
was like a
Bellucci's
6 out
in that film.
Yeah, right.
What is a
Wow.
6 out of 10 movie
HAF?
that I could compare?
That is a big 6. That is a big 6.
I
What
like
you-
Rush Hour 2. There we go. That's the dumb 6 out
That's
of
a
10
big
movie.
6. Yeah, that counts. See, I
Yeah,
think this
Rush
is
Hour
it.
2 is
These
a
are
big
big
6.
6s.
It was funny that we were talking about like depending on who you are and like kind of what does a 6 mean and what does a 5 mean. Edge magazine gave it a 5 out of 10, which I would say this about Edge: they are at least the ones that were the most honest in their kind of reviews of like 5 is a average score. Like what
Yeah.
IGN would give a 7, Edge gives a 5. So I think that's kind of about right. And they've basically said once you've wiped away the layer of gore, you're left with an experience that expectedly offers limited entertainment, which a bit meaner than what Games DM said, but I would say still kind of right in that.
If the shooting isn't appealing to you, if the concept, if you're not having fun with the Punisher, yeah, that is going to be a 5 out of 10. Depends on what elements kind of jump out and entertain you.
Yeah, and like comparing it to like say the Activision's, well, you know what, I'll give the Punisher this. Going all the way back to what you said earlier, Matty, about me saying, would the Punisher even make my top 10? Well, it's higher than Hulk Ultimate Destruction, that's for sure, and it's higher than like, God, I'm just trying to think of other games at the time. Like the X-Men Legends are higher than this. Maybe 1, and then maybe Marvel Ultimate Alliance is higher.
Yeah,
than this.
sure. It's definitely higher than the kind of MCU tie-in games, though, right? You know, Captain America, Super Soldier, and Thor. Whatever.
Oh
it
no,
was
Captain
called.
America Super Soldier's got juiced. Like that's like
It's alright.
baby-
It's
yeah,
it's like a
good.
baby Arkham.
It's,
Yeah.
it's like baby
I
Arkham.
totally forgot about those. What about the Wolverine game? Some people like that Wolverine
So
game.
Wolverine
dude.
Origins is good, but it's not like as like I think people kind of celebrate like they kind of pump that game up a little bit too.
They pump
much.
it up because they didn't expect it to be.
It's
Yeah.
because it's the opposite of what you'd expect. It is a tie-in video game to a film that was really terrible, and the game is much better. And usually the opposite is true. The tie-in game is always worse.
Yeah.
This is the one time the game was better than the film. So I think
It's
that's
the thing
why.
It's the thing that I've always meanly said about Arkham Asylum, which was it was a Batman game, and so the fact that it's as good as it is, you think that that game's like a 12 out of 10 because you're so used to really bad Batman games that there's something
and
that
bad,
is a
and bad
solid
film
9.
tie-in games as well. I think there's a really great thing where somebody realised at some point the real key is not to make a tie-in game. It's just to release a game at the same time as the film. So the same character, the same setting, but just don't bother trying to do any of the tie-in garbage.
No.
And every time that happens, it's pretty much bang on. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really like I really like Wolverine's Revenge on the PS2. That's a game that gets.
I was thinking of that game when you
that's
mentioned
often
yeah, it's got Hamill, hasn't it?
It's Mark Hamill playing Wolverine, yeah, and it's really like faithful to the comics. Again, it came out to tie into X-Men 2, but it's nothing to do with the film. There's no plot lines or anything, and I had a really good time with it. It's got kind of rudimentary stealth mechanics. It's good stuff.
So no, but Punisher's pretty high up, and I mean, but you compare it to other third-person shooters of the era. Of course, it's not going to be it. But then again, I'm getting something interesting here of just like I haven't played a lot of arcadey third-person shooters, and this was the era where they went away because basically third-person shooting then went hand in hand with adventure games, and when you get to the PS3, that is the genre. that is Uncharted, that is Gears, that then eventually becomes The Last of Us, and every single Sony game that's been made in the last 10 years is that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, context is key, obviously, but Punisher, yeah, I don't know. You might look at it with a kind of a keener eye. And again, even taking in this kind of modern political context, it's one of those things a bit of like, it kind of knows what it's doing. Not to the extent that I think it is like a perfect piece of camp, but if you kind of get on the wavelength of it, it does work, you know?
We're going to be talking about that kind of thing a lot on the Urban Chaos episode, because Urban Chaos is riding that line so much.
Urban Chaos is like, on a good day, it looks like RoboCop, but like if you are not on the wavelength of that game, then you do just kind of go like, it's a bit scummy. This game is a little bit scummy.
I feel like a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah, this game's a little bit on the nose with some stuff. I mean,
I twirl my revolver.
I think at this point, the episode will be out, so Matt will just tell you, but like, you boot that game up, and all the menus are a constant looping American flag waving.
Oh my god!
Really? So it's
like a kind of classic rock song, and it's like, this was made by the British. Are we taking the piss?
Again,
it's great.
It's very GTA, like tongue in cheek kind of, and again, like sort of on that Verhoeven tip of.
Yeah.
They use live action cutscenes to kind of tell the story, and it's all like, gangs are out of control, so we've put more money into the police. They get to use all these weapons now, kind of thing.
So and that works really well then, as like as a duology with Judge Dredd versus Death, which you're going to cover as well, right?
And it also, yeah, exactly. And it is also an interesting ramp point into they make a game about cops, and then they make a game about the ultimate cop, Batman. So
yes.
And then they make a game where you kill the cops.
Well, no. No, there's no cop. No, Snake. I mean, I was pretty negative about Suicide Squad. The problem with Suicide Squad is that there's no cops in that game. There's nobody in Suicide Squad. It is a dead world.
I mean, I watched you play that game, and all I remember is me and Skeleton making Batman flow jokes.
Yeah, you were doing the Dracula flow, but with Batman. Yeah, which was pretty good.
We smoking kryptonite. We're smoking the shit that killed Kal-El.
These guys don't know who I am. I'm the son of the demon, man. Let's bring this home then with let's talk about the charts. So this game released January 17th, 2005. Ooh. However, we're doing, because we have two Brits on, and because it was the only charts I could find, we're going to do UK chart track, where in the EU, this game came out March 4th, 2005.
Ooh.
Again, such an interesting thing in regards to, like, because of e-figs, like, games just used to come out later because of getting the translations. But yeah, so this game would have come out this game would have qualified for the charts March 5th, 2005. Now, first question. Where do you think this game came on the charts?
In March?
Yes, in March.
I'm going to say this game came out at number 7.
You're going to put it at number 7?
We talked a lot about 7s, so I'm staking on 7 right now.
Okay. I'm going to stay with my original nice, safe, playing the pars. I'm going down 5. Bang in the middle.
You're going to put it at number 5. Snake put it at number 7. Now, there are 40 places in UK chart track. It did not qualify for the charts that we could.
Oh no!
Even the top 40. I was thinking it was the top 10.
It did not break the top 40. Now,
2005 was a hell of a year.
Looking at this
drink
list,
a 40 after learning that.
It is a fucking belter. But yeah, I had a look at some future weeks, and no, it never made the top 40, which is really, it's just kind of unfortunate. Again, did make a lot of money. Probably did pretty well in the States, where, you know.
Do you think it was it just kind of a slow burner, or did it just not do anything over here?
I imagine. I mean, think of just the fucking.
It's a tough year.
I mean,
360 launched.
Half-Life 2 came out last November. Shit's fucking popping right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking at this list and it is like eye-watering, some of the stuff that's on here. But like, I mean, I think it probably, as you said, it's probably a slow burn. And like, think of how many CEXs that we've gone to where there's like every game that came out in 2005 and there's like thousands of unique games in there.
Yeah. It was a hell of a year. And
Oh, yeah.
for every genre as well. Because I guess as well, like at that time, PS2 and Xbox were sunsetting, but there was definitely a way more varied range of genres available. This is really before the rise of the brown shooter, which really dominated the late 2000s. So there was still quite a lot of racing games, driving games, RPGs. There was a lot, and a lot of those genres had their best entries at that time as well. First God of War, like absolute worldy. Devil May Cry was off to, good run, wasn't it? Like, and
Need for Speed was fucking great.
Yeah, right. Burnout. I think Burnout 3 was it? Doing it 3 or Takedown?
I think it was
or
a
something like that?
360
3
re-release.
came out 05, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 04. Yeah, because Black. No, it did come out in 05 because Black came out then right at the beginning of 06.
Revenge was 2005, wasn't it?
That's right. Revenge.
You mentioned CEX, by the way, and I just want to point out this like weird coincidence as well, going back to Arkham and Batman, and well, now with the mention of CEX, I've got a copy in my hand in a little plastic slip of Batman.
You got a free
Arkham
copy
Knight.
of Arkham Knight with the game.
I went to a CEX the other day, and I was just browsing the PC section, the PS2 section, because I like to find my PS2 garbage.
Hell
I
yeah.
wound up leaving with a copy of Trapped Dead, which is a PC game I'd never heard of, but it had a cardboard cover with a very funny image on the front, and a copy of Black and White 2 by Lionhead.
Nice.
And I literally only just put together right now, I understand now how the Batman disc made it next to Black and White 2.
Yeah. Both beats.
Batman Arkham Knight, Black and White 2. It even kind of rhymes. But I was just like, I was going to throw away my CEX bag, and then I just like, I feel a disc in there. And I just reached in and was like, where the fuck is there a copy of Arkham Knight for the PS4? But free copy of Arkham
game.
Knight for the PS4.
Nice.
Can't argue with that. Well, to say the most nostalgia pill thing, I'll say all episode, talking about all the games that came out in 05. We didn't know how good we had it.
Yes.
We can only look back now.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, true, but not true. Like, obviously, good games come out.
No,
all the
I
time,
mean,
but-
hundreds of good
Oh
games
no,
come out.
I live by the philosophy that it just continually gets better because all the old games keep existing anyway.
yeah.
You know what? That's exactly right.
I mean,
Also-
like, unless they're live service, but that's.
Also, I think in general, games are just getting better, either from like accessibility standpoints or like being able to get them from different like stores or on different devices and stuff. It's
I'm gonna say, if you're like someone who's bitter about the state of games today, there's probably a million good games back from the old days that are very cheap and you haven't had a chance to try yet. So
Well,
you don't
this
have to
is
bitch about
actually-
the modern system.
yeah.
Modern AAA sucks. I get it. But you can go play the old stuff. You can go play interesting. Not all indie games
Even
are
then, not
a
all
sad
of-
man.
not all of modern AAA stuff. I think it's just that people focus on like the big like
And
disasters. like
negativity sells in online circles.
exactly. Like Suicide
Yeah,
Squad
so-
was a dud, but then like Dragon's Dogma 2's recently come out, and that's a fucking stonker. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I
I-
was
I-
about to say something really bitter, but yeah, I'm not going to let myself.
But looking back at times like this as well, I think this is a great thing to look at something like Punisher, because if you were to gloss over 2005, you'd go, yeah, Resident Evil 4, Splinter Cell, Battlefront 2, and then you could gloss.
This is a game that falls through those cracks.
Yeah,
but
you
it's
could
still
then move on to
perfectly fine.
2006, and you could kind of forget that a lot of these games existed at this time. And actually, one of the things I like to do, I mean, I do this on my channel, but I like to do this in my personal life. It's not really just a YouTube grift. Like, I like to just go, what games did I miss when I was 15 and I was really busy playing God of War on the PS2? What games did I miss? And there's a ton. There's always like 200 games that you didn't play because you were too busy playing whatever floated to the top. And man, there's some bangers hidden in there.
Like, I've just got a PS2 like emulation thing just set up with a million games that I'd never heard of, and you just go through some of them. It's like, oh, this is a banger, this is a banger. Like fucking it's funny, when I was a kid, you know what game I really liked? I really, really liked Shadow of Rome, and I was like, why aren't there Roman gladiatorial combat games?
Gladius.
I love Roman gladiatorial.
Yeah,
Gladius is good. I had Gladius
Gladius is
as
a
kid,
banger.
but I discovered Colosseum Road to Freedom. I was like, oh my god, this is a fucking belter, this game. And then from there, the PSP game, like Gladiator Begins, which is also
Nice.
really good. It's like, okay, no, there were games that I would have loved as a kid, but I get them now, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say this chart is full of like those kind of magic bangers that aren't quite. Apart from one of these, well, apart from literally number one, but we'll get to that. These are all games that is like, hey, if I wanted to build a solid collection of PS2, maybe AA bangers, these are what you would go for. But We're going to start with number 1, which is literally brand new entry this week. It is a third-person action game. Probably one of the most famous Sony franchises that they didn't produce.
Ratchet and Clank.
Not Ratchet and Clank, no. Humans. Stars human beings.
As the main characters.
Yes.
Is this the top-selling game of 2005? Is this what we're guessing?
This is definitely one of the top-selling games of 2005, yeah.
I feel annoyed that I'm drawing a blank because this is immediate.
I'll give some more clues. This is a huge sequel.
Is it Call of Duty?
It
That's
is
not third person.
not a Call of Duty game.
Yeah, it's third person.
Oh.
Biggest Sony product that isn't Sony.
Yeah, but it's a franchise that it was associated pretty hard with PlayStation.
Oh, is it Metal Gear Solid?
It is. Which one?
3.
3?
It is
2005.
Metal Gear Solid 3
Yeah.
Snake Eater.
Oh yeah, I wasn't really thinking in terms of like, because I think Metal Gear Solid 4 is onwards where you get third person shooter.
No, this
The
was
original release of 3 kind of blew because the camera was terrible.
Well, I was going to say, when I say it's third person, it's like, I guess it's more top down, isn't it? But yeah.
No, but that's I get what you mean though. It's still third person.
Yeah, and obviously
Yeah,
then later in the year, or I think really right at the beginning of 2006, we get Subsistence, which is like, oh yeah, this is the shit. But
I'm gonna sound like a poser now because I didn't immediately gear, but that's one of my favorite games.
yes,
So.
Snake
Yeah,
Eater is
right.
a fucking banger.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Right.
I mean, look at my username and think, why is he called Snakerer? What's he a fan of?
The mobile game.
I love
Nokias.
Snake.
Yeah,
My
love-
Nokias,
Hell yeah.
banging that out non-stop.
I'll tell you what else is a fucking banger. This was number 1 last week, moved down 1 place. It's at number 2 now. I think this is a Matty classic in my head, but it is a game published by LucasArts.
Oh. This is 2005. This is a 2005.
This is 2005, and I'll give you a clue
Psychonauts.
for number 2. What was that?
Psychonauts. Oh wait, that's a Double Fine game. It's not LucasArts.
Yeah,
is
that
it?
is a Double Fine game. I'll give you a clue. It is a LucasArts published game, but it is not a Star Wars game.
Ooh.
What was they doing at the time?
It's Mercenaries 2.
You know what? I'll give it to you because it's
Is it
not
Mercenaries
Mercenaries 2, but it is Mercenaries
they did.
1.
Yeah.
That's
Hell of a game.
game.
Yeah, that's
That is
a hell of a game.
that is a game that I hadn't played until very recently through emulation, and I was like, "Where has this been all my life? This
It's,
is exactly my
There's
shit."
a hidden Han Solo character. If you do a bunch of missions and get a certain score, you can unlock Han Solo in that game.
Interesting. I did not know that was a thing. The funny thing is that I discovered this game from one of the guys who worked at Pandemic, who was a writer who has now gone on to be like a big RPG guy, and he makes videos on YouTube about like how to be a good DM and stuff like
And
that.
also, that guy also wrote that like 4 versus 1 monster game.
Oh, Evolve.
Evolve, yeah, he was a writer on Evolve. I know who you're talking about, and I'm
Matt
subscribed to
Colville.
him. Matt Colville, yeah, I used to watch his stuff because I was kind of still just getting into tabletop. Actually, it was maybe a few years. No, it was a few years then, yeah. But I was like, how do I up my game? And his videos just kind of hit at just the right time. Though they're all D&D focused, which don't like D&D. So I liked his advice. So mixed bag.
He has written a new system, which that's a story for another time. Because at number 3 is another brand new entry. It is a first-person shooter that we actually talked about earlier on this podcast, if you believe such a thing. Another Matty banger. And I'm trying to think of a clue to give that won't immediately give it away. It's a squad-based shooter, I guess.
Oh yeah, I know it. I'm going to let Snake guess.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it to
I mean, I always hate when he says we mentioned it previously because then my brain flushes everything.
No, and it has been like 2.5 hours, so I don't blame you.
Okay.
Okay, so Snake, I will give you some extra clues then. It is a game based on Star Wars.
Oh, Galactic Commando.
Well, you both
close.
get points, but I'll correct you
That's
a little
good.
bit. It is Star Wars Republic Commando.
Oh, yeah.
one of my
Republic Commando,
favorites.
yeah.
Featuring the music of Ash.
It featured the music of Ash.
Ash, they're here. Now, this was second place last week. It has now moved down to 4. I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. Basically, it's a compilation of lots of smaller games from the Genesis era.
Oh, it's one of those Sonic and Sega collections.
Yeah, if you can narrow that down a little bit more, I'll give you the point. But you've said two of the words that are in this.
Sonic Gems collection or Sonic Mega collection.
I'll give you that. The Sonic Mega Collection plus the sequel.
Oh yeah, they released the first one of those around the time of Sonic Heroes, and then they made Plus, and then they made Gems, and the Gems collection kind of blows because it's all the runoffs. Those aren't gems; those are like
because Mega Collection was it was all the Mega Drive ones plus they did blended Free and Knuckles, didn't they? And then Plus was those plus like
actually I don't remember if they blended. Maybe they did. They probably did, but you had to like. They had a weird unlock system and a bunch of comic covers.
Oh, yeah. A fact that I forgot to mention about the Punisher while we were talking about it, which is its flashy intro FMV cutscene, which every game of this era had, was done by Blur Studios, isn't it? Yeah, it was done by Blur Studios, who were David Fincher's like CGI guys, but they did like thousands.
They did like the World of Warcraft trailers that were really famous at the time.
Yeah, they did the Old Republic trailers at E3 and stuff like that. But Snake, you would know them best for Shadow the Hedgehog. They animated him pumping the assault rifle like it was a shotgun.
It's very funny because there was an interview recently where they said, we knew that was wrong, but that's what they asked for, so we had a bit of fun with
That's what Yuji Naka directly asked for. And you know what's funny as well is that they got their start doing those. They did Shadow the Hedgehog and they did all the cutscenes in Sonic 06. They are now the lead animation studio on all of the Sonic films because they're directed by Tim Miller, who is a Blur Studios guy.
Did they do the? I don't. If you don't know this, I won't blame you because you're not like super in Sonic. Did they do the Unleashed intro? Because that was a fucking banger.
They did not. That was a Sega. I believe that was a Japanese CG company cut their teeth doing those. But no, Blur Studios did those.
God damn! If that's a teeth cutting exercise, those teeth are fucking sharp.
No, those CG intros in those games are bangers. But now Blur, really interesting studio. And again, like because we talked about like Fincher, I think I mentioned Fincher in the smallest amount when we talked about the Transformers, but yeah, he's got a bit of a Lucas thing of just like he used his clout to push innovation in CG stuff. If it wasn't for Blur, Blender wouldn't be as big as it was because they made a short using it called like Big Buck Bunny or something, which was like one of the first big animated projects made in that software. So good on them.
Yeah,
and I also say
iconic studio. I think iconic CG studio.
Yeah, and I always associate him as well with like the late 360 era of just what I call lying E3 trailers, where they just show like absolute banger concept videos and like and
just then they getting you gassed up.
And then like somebody would come on stage and be like, "Oh yeah, the game's gonna look like that." It's like, Killzone 2 is gonna look like that. Yeah, don't worry about it.
We've got boys in the lab. It's gonna be like that. It's gonna be like that. They're cooking.
God, Motorstorm's the funniest version of that, where it was like that game has like particle shadows, and like modern games can't do fucking like it's so computationally expensive, and they just threw him in this fucking PS3 trailer. It's like so fucking stupid. Tell you what isn't though, a look. This is still at number 5. One of the absolute biggest games of 2005.
Did it release in 2005? You said it was a lock.
I want to say it was either really early 2005 or right at the end of 2004. It is another entry in one of like the biggest franchises of this era.
Is it Grand Theft Auto?
It is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
San Andreas.
Oh, man.
I thought that was a late 2004 release.
I think it was, yeah, but I don't think it ever left the charts. Is the thing. Which is why I said I
learned about midnight releases through that game. I had some friends at uni who went to the midnight release at Game to go and get San Andreas. Wow.
Funnily enough, my first midnight release was fucking Halo Reach, which was a couple of years after that. But
nice.
I never did a midnight release.
I never did one for a game. I never did one for a game.
I've done a midnight release, and I also did an early morning release because fucking Sainsbury's had managed to cut a deal with Activision somehow that they had the cheapest copies of Modern Warfare 2. So
Nice.
So before we went to uni lectures in the morning, we were all up at the crack of 6 in the morning to go queue around the marina where Sainsbury's is. Pretty cool stuff. Now, number 6 in the charts, down from 3rd place last week, is a kids platformer game based on a film which was itself based on a cartoon popular at the time.
Ooh.
I'm going to say it's a cartoon that's a bit before our era, but it is pretty big with people that we know.
Oh. SpongeBob?
Wallace and Gromit?
Oh, mate, Wallace and Gromit, 100%.
I wish it was Wallace and Gromit, but no, Matt,
Better than-
you said SpongeBob, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I guess SpongeBob.
Yeah, you did. So yeah, this is the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, The Game.
Wow.
By Heavy Iron Studios and published by THQ.
I wish it was Wallace and Gromit, though. I wish it was.
I wish it was Wallace and Gromit as well, but what can you do?
What can
Another
you do?
lock from last week at number 7 is a game based on a animated television show.
Simpsons?
Wallace
It is
and
The
Gromit.
Simpsons, but which one?
The Simpsons get Hit and Run or the movie?
No, the
not
movie. The
just
movie.
Simpsons.
I mean, I'll give it to you anyways because it was your first answer. Yeah, it is The Simpsons : Hit ampersand Run by Radical Entertainment and Vivendi Universal Games.
That is a game that does actually quite well in the wake of GTA likes because it's pretty fun. That is a cult classic Simpsons
Yeah,
game.
definitely.
Again, like I said earlier, these are all a bunch of AA. I'm gonna bulk out my PS2 collection bangers because I knew everybody on the block had The Simpsons sitting.
That's a good passing the controller back and forth with your mates game.
Ooh,
That is
yeah.
up there. That is up there.
And I want to say that it was before, like, it was still at the time where The Simpsons was on, like, BBC Two before it went to
Yeah.
Channel 4, and, like, it was
Yeah.
still all the kind of early season stuff that people liked. So,
We were getting
Yeah,
the golden
you could
era.
hit
We were just getting a
Milhouse
few
with a
years
car.
later. Yeah.
yeah. God. Good old The Simpsons, hit and run. It's funny, actually, because, Snake, you've been on a few episodes where this game's because we've done, like, kind of a lot of Wart stuff. Like, it was in I want to say when we did Black, but it was definitely when we were doing all the Free Radical stuff that it came up a couple of times. But, yeah.
We're both Simpsons heads as well, so we just naturally gravitate towards Simpson topics.
That's true. A topic that we also gravitate towards, number 8 this week, down from 6, is a racing game by Electronic Arts.
Burnout.
It is not Burnout.
Really?
Is it the Need for Speed Most Wanted?
It's not Need for Speed Most Wanted, but it is a Need for Speed.
Need for Speed
Carbon?
Underground. Is that one?
It
is
is
that real?
Need for Speed Underground, but which one?
2.
It is Need for Speed Underground 2 by Black Box Games and EA. Funny story from me. One of my animation teachers at university got his start working. Well, he didn't get his start, but he works at Black Box in Canada.
Wow.
Yeah. He plays, funnily enough, he is in Underground 2 as, quote, Korean thug, is what it says on IMDb. So there we go. And then he worked on Skate, and he had a lot of interesting Skate stories. So pretty good.
That is a series that just feels very locked in its era, doesn't it? Because
What, Underground 2? Yeah, like...
Oh yeah, Underground 2 and Skate. I meant like Skate.
Oh,
like, wow,
yeah.
that felt massive during its era, and then just the moment that era was up, it's just no
What?
one talks about Skate anymore.
I think it's because, and people forget this, but everyone loves the Tony Hawk games. And it's one of those
Yeah.
things that Activision just don't make them any. And like, the last time they made one was a remake of the 1 and 2, and it was like one of the best-selling games of that year.
It's
And then the
kids
last-
still
Shut that studio.
skateboard as well. So I actually like went through a bit of a thing with this. I was like, oh, how come they don't make games like this anymore? Like kind of being one of those kind of nostalgia jerks. And then I was like, well, do you know what? The chances are the culture's just moved on. Kids don't skateboard anymore. You know, we all just moved on. We're into new things. No, kids are still super into skateboarding. Like there's tons of kids still skateboarding.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure a game like that would still fly. So actually, I don't know why they don't make them anymore.
It's a piece of wood that you can move very quickly on. Kids have loved that for the past 100 years.
Yeah.
And again, like, yeah, sure, Tony Hawk was at his biggest in the 90s. Skateboarding is still a thing.
Yeah, it's still huge.
Jackass
Kids
style
love it.
skits are still a thing as well, which is kind of what crosses over with that. And again, like
Yeah.
I said, 1 and 2 did really well, but then Activision were like, oh yeah, but we got to spend all this money on Diablo 4 that only 10 people are gonna play. So no,
Diablo is for dorks.
Diablo
People
is for
play Tony
dorks.
Hawk.
Yeah, hey, there we go. I like
There's
that.
a little rhyme.
Yeah, Snake, you should go back in time to the 1940s to put rhymes on wartime posters. Diablo's for dorks, play Tony Hawks. Oh, jeez. Number 9 in the charts, down from number 4 last week, is another Star Wars game. Which one?
But Battlefront 2.
It's not Battlefront 2. No. I would say
Whoa!
it isn't a shooter, this one.
Oh,
Is it Revenge of the Sith?
Yes, the tie-in game to the film, right?
It is not Revenge of the Sith.
Oh my god.
Holy shit, I'm out of ideas.
Is it the
Is it-
strategy spin-off?
Yeah.
It's
Empire.
not. I'm going to give you this clue. It's not tied into any of the films. It's tied into larger Star Wars lore.
Oh, is it Knights of the Old Republic 2?
It is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 by Obsidian Entertainment and published by LucasArts. Good job, them. Now, number 10, up 2 places from 12 last week. We got 2 pretty boys on the call, so they will be able to brace each other to try and guess what this is a sports game, and to narrow it down even more, a footy game.
Pro Evo.
I'll just go FIFA. I'll just go the other side.
Yeah, we're just placing our bets.
We're just
on
tossing a
which of the
coin.
big two.
We're just tossing a coin.
Yeah.
All right, so Snake has gone for Pro Evolution Soccer.
Yeah.
Matty has gone for FIFA. The point goes to YouTube's to Snake because it is Pro Evolution Soccer 4.
Hey,
Well
Hi,
done. Well
Konami.
done.
Congratulations.
pure gamble.
That's why I narrowed it down to footy, because I was like, on the
Because every time it becomes MLB.
MLB the show.
Well, there
Yeah.
was one I listened to where it was Brian Lara cricket, and I was really gassed about that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, Brian Lara's
That's
cricket
a
did turn up
shocker.
in there. Yes.
It was like the number one game of the year.
My favorite of those sports games, and you see it like in every CX, is just rugby. There's no year, it's just rugby.
Yeah, like
The
I
one
said,
rugby game.
whatever console you put it into, it's just going to update with the current rosters. You can just play
Oh,
it on anything.
wow.
Yeah.
What? It's a shame no one plays it, because that's an amazing bit of tech.
Oh yeah, no, nobody knows. Modern Vintage Gamer hasn't made a video about that yet. I'm very surprised. But so there we go. So that is the charts, and that is the end of the episode. So, Matty, thank you very much for coming to join us to talk about the Punisher, to talk about the games of 2005. To, you know what, help us through wading through this rather political episode, talking about the metrics of the Punisher and FPS stuff. I think you were a pretty firm hand on that, so thank you very much. So I'm going to allow you to plug whatever you want. I mean, granted, I let everybody do that on there.
Yeah, the way you were building up was like, you've earned this one.
You've really
You know what? I'll let you
earned
promote
this.
2 things then. There you go. That's-
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me. It was really good to come on. It was a really cool subject for me to jump into, so it's good to have the opportunity. My YouTube channel, you can find me just probably by looking for Stoked, but my actual tag is at Matty Stoked. You should be able to find me on there. I don't really do many other socials. I just tend to keep it all onto YouTube. So if I was going to plug a second thing, I guess I'd say Free Palestine. That would be it. That's my plug.
Oh, excellent.
Sign up, send some money, get involved in some charity. Let's go.
Excellent stuff. YouTube Sneaker, thank you for coming back for the Please Be, I guess, for one of these episodes that we're covering so far. Is there anything you'd like to shout out?
Oh, you can find me at YouTube's to Snakerer. That's just the URL. Don't worry, it'll get there. I guess I'll shout out. I guess it's funny. I thought, I'll come into this episode with a shout out, and the moment we hit record, I was like, fuck, what was I going to shout out? So I'll just shout out a smaller channel, a bit lesser, is Lute, Lute. I really like their videos. They are a lot of fun. They recently put out one on Jumping Flash, which I think James, you're going to be talking about soon, right?
Yeah, so Coyote
Yeah.
Time, we may be, we might do a crossover Coyote Time, Bullet Time to talk about the first person platformer. jumping Flash. So yeah, that is on the way. But yeah, I haven't seen Lute's video on it yet, so I'll be interested to hear
It's
their
a very fun
thoughts.
video. It's a very recent I don't want to call them running shine likes because I think they've all got their own kind of style, but
Unique
it's
identity.
yeah, it's kind of very kind of much more light-hearted, much more like, hey, here's just a cool thing, which it can be kind of vapid. I'm not saying Lute's is. I think it's a style that not many people can get right because coming off naturally relaxed is actually quite a bit harder than it seems, but Lute has that kind of ability.
Nice. I'll put those links in the podcast description. As always, folks, I've been James. You can follow me over on X, the website formerly known as Twitter, at Hotcider, HOTCYDER. And hey, if you like this episode, leave us a review. If you really like this episode, you can help support more over on Patreon at Hotcider. Until next time, though, folks. I mean, I was gonna say keep punishing rather than like as a thing on keep blasting, but
keep torturing. Oh wait, that's even worse.
Yeah, that's worse. Don't do any of those things. Defund the
don't
police.
torture, don't torture, don't punish, no blasting. Yeah, there we go. That's my thing at the end of this episode. No more blasting. This is a no blasting zone.
Take a break on blasting. Just hold off for a little bit.
You know what? For a week, folks, take a break from blasting. You save your blasting for another time. That's my suggestion. There you go.
There we go. For Lent,
Nice.
stop blasting, even though we are firmly out of it.
Oh yeah, at this point. Yeah. This podcast has been made possible by Dylan Robinson, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Jesse Garasha, Kevin from Pixellit, Mouse, Twyla27, Valerie B, VG, and the Hot Cider support tier. If you'd like to help with the production of episodes and gain access to extra content, consider supporting over at patreon.com/hotcider. That's HOTCYDER. A special thanks to Max Coburn for the Bullet Time theme tune.